Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Changeup, the Impossible Movie Remake Show. My name is Johnny Doop. I am your champion and your host today. We have an episode of Forgotten Movies. We are returning back to it. We haven't done it in a long time, but we have a few different formatting changes that we're excited to test out today and hopefully use going forward. But for those of you who don't know our show, our contestants will be pitching from a list of 7 different movies and facing each other. And Tristan, my co-host, and I will be deciding who wins as judges of each round. First to 4 wins. It's exciting to return to this format and to see if we can get some more traction on it. If you are watching this video, please like and subscribe on YouTube, and please give us 5-star reviews on any of your favorite podcast apps. Would be great. But before we get to what movies and everything we're doing today, I will let my co-judge introduce himself.
It's good to be here, Johnny. I do love the Forgotten Movies. You've done these before. It's pretty fun to dig these up. Some of these are very hard to find. I had to dig through the dark webs and go through all the illegal, heroin trading to find some of these movies. But, if you dig there, you can find them. I promise you. So go ahead and do a Google search, see what you can find on these. And Johnny mentioned he's a champion, and I'm surprised he's not showing off his belt right now. But
are you,
look,
though?
it is. There, he's got it right there. He spent a lot of money on that belt. And I want you guys to spend money on the podcast too. So I'm introducing the first Movie Changeup t-shirt.
Wow.
It says, pretty blunt to the point, Johnny sucks. And if you want to be reminded why, it just says, bad take.
Johnny sucks is a bad take. I agree.
So
I think he fucked up over there.
Anytime they mention, oh, you got 1 minute, you can't interrupt Johnny, I can just point and go, bad take. You don't even got to explain. Johnny says something stupid, he goes, oh, Edgar Wright's bad. Oh, Baby Driver's bad. Let's go, bad take.
And I'll just hold this baby up forever.
Sure, you can win. You can steal as many wins as you want, Joe. Or Johnny.
Yeah,
and Joe. Joe stole it for you, obviously. But look, it's a perfect reminder. No matter what's happening, no matter what episode it is, me and Johnny are co-workers right now. We're working together to make this happen, but still.
Don't worry, no bias at all between the judges here. No animosity at all with that bolded shirt. But yeah, I like that it says bad take underneath because we agree. Johnny sucks, bad take. Bobby, do you have any exciting shirts or heroin references you'd like to make?
I mean, I was browsing the dark web for heroin earlier because I'm sure that's a thing. But no, I am wearing a shirt I've worn probably a million times in this podcast. But yeah, I'm excited for the show. Forgotten Movies is fun. It's definitely interesting to look at movies that not a lot of people know about. But I think I made some of them fun because I found some of the stories boring. So. I mean, I think I'm either going to go 7-0, well, 4-0 with a new format, or I'm going to go 0-4 and be swept out of the building. So I like my take. I like my pitches. I think they're good takes, unlike Tristan's shirt, like what his shirt says, I mean. So there you go. So I hope you guys agree, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we will see. Joe, are you intimidated by Bobby's not very aggressive attitude going into this episode?
I've never been intimidated a day in my life. I just ride I just go how I go, man. Go with the breeze. Never been intimidated, but I don't know if I'm out there intimidating people. As far as shirts go, we got 4th of July in a couple days, so I wanted to wear my Abraham Lincoln America shirt that says America, because who doesn't love Abraham Lincoln? So, yeah. It's the shirt I'm rocking.
Shot him, that I can't think of his name.
John Wilkes Booth.
John Wilkes Booth. That would have been a better joke if I could have thought of it.
Yeah.
All right, so I will just end on this too, Joe. We are making a few changes in the format, and we all kind of talked about this, but I think you have a good grasp on explaining that. So explain what our new format for the episode and the fights will be today.
All right, so we've received complaints from people. I don't want to say complaints, more suggestions, I think. And one of the problems people have had with getting into the podcast is they see like a 2.5-hour runtime. And kind of like we've talked about, intimidating. That can be intimidating to a new viewer. So we want to cut down on that. So the first thing, instead of doing this whole repeat rule and stuff like that we've done before in the past, we're doing an official best of 7. You win 4 pitches, that's it, episode over, have a great night. And I think number one, that'll cut down on episode length because we'll probably only have 5 or 6 pitches instead of 7. And then another thing too is we've kind of had like a 5-minute free-for-all in fighting back and forth once we've done our pitches, and I think as someone who's timed those, a lot of times that can run into like 6, 7, 8 minutes. And so instead of having just a 5-minute free-for-all where everyone's talking over each other and having just a lot of nonsense, we wanted to have more of a structured debate. So whoever pitches first will then, after both pitches have been read, they will have 1 minute to attack the other person's pitch, and then the second person will have 1 minute to attack the other person's pitch, and then we will go into each person will have 2 minutes to either further attack or defend or both for their pitches. So it's 1 minute. So each person will have 1 minute to attack, and then 2 minutes to attack or defend, whatever they would like to do.
All right. Well, there we go. So with that being said, we'll just we'll kick it off. We'll get into it. I will read what movies that we're doing today, and Tristan, if you have the rules handy, can read the rules. So anyone who has not seen us obviously fight before, the contestants have a list of 7 movies, 7 rules. They need to use 1 rule per fight and per movie. Just like always, the formatting doesn't change what the basis is on that. So today we are going with forgotten movies, so movies that people out there might not have heard of, probably haven't seen. Maybe there's a few hardcore fans out there though, like us, that know these ones, or some dark web searchers like Bobby and Tristan. So we're starting off today. First, I'll just read off. We have the Bone Wars from 1993. We have Metroid from 2001. We have the Woodpecker from 1972. We have They're Great, the Frosted Flakes story from 2002. Great. We have Cryptid Hunters from 2013. Flaming Hot from 1940, and the all but forgotten Crash Bandicoot, the movie from 1998. So those are our films. Tristan, what are the 7 rules our contestants must use today?
Yeah, like Johnny said, there's 7 rules, and they have to match one of these each of the movies that they're pitching. So here are the 7 rules for the episode. The first one is turn one into a mini-series. We've seen plenty of great mini-series recently, so it's probably a good one to pick. One must put an actor on the map. Make one a foreign film. I feel like that's a staple whenever Johnny's judging. One must be a character made famous by Nic Cage. I feel like that's a staple whenever me and Johnny are both judging. You give us Nic Cage, it's the perfect combination. One must be cast and released as a 1980s movie. So you pick a year in the 80s, and you have to use a cast and a crew and a director that'll all be part of that year in film. You must use the cast of a sitcom. So you pick a sitcom, and your entire cast must be from the cast of that sitcom. And one must be directed by the auteur, indeed, darling Paul Thomas Anderson.
Exactly. All right, and Bobby won our little contest before the episode starts, and with the new format, I think it becomes all the more important what movies you're choosing. So, Bobby, where are we starting, and who's going first?
We're going to start with the classic, The Woodpecker, and I'll go first on it. Perfect.
All right, for anyone who doesn't know, The Woodpecker came out in 1972. It got a 38% of Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by the great Sam Peckinpah. This murder mystery tells the story of Detective Ace Springer, played by Charlton Heston, who is on the search for a serial killer nicknamed the Woodpecker for carving messages in trees where his victims are found. A lot of information there. So, Bobby, you said who's going first? I'm sorry.
I'm going to go first.
All right.
So I'll give my pitch, and then. So just to be clear in the format, though, is it so I pitch, then Joe pitches, then we go into our attacks?
Yeah, because you can't really attack mine if you don't know shit about mine. So
perfect. Just want to be clear. So to get started, the rule I chose is that I'm making this a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I think I could pull that off well with the kind of story I wanted to go for. The Woodpecker himself is going to be played by Joaquin Phoenix, who has worked with him a bunch of times. The detective Ace Springer is going to be played by Paul Dano. They're kind of our main 2 leads that you're going to be cutting back and forth to. The police chief that Paul Dano is working for and kind of reports to on it is going to be played by Josh Brolin. And then Paul Dano's estranged father, who he's trying to reconnect with throughout the movie, is like kind of the family subplot, is going to be played by Eric Roberts, who a lot of people know now from like The Dark Knight, but he has done a lot of stuff and has worked with Paul Thomas Anderson before as well.
A Talking Cat, a great film where he voices a talking cat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was like, that's not
a lot of sci-fi original movies. That is, I swear to God, that's Eric Roberts.
Did he?
Yeah, it was great. Recent episode of How Did This Get Made? I highly recommend it. Great Eric Roberts. He accepts anything and everything.
Yep, but he's good in a good movie. So that's who I have there. So my movie is going to be more of like a character piece, crime drama, focusing on an insecure detective who stumbles into leading an investigation of a serial killer known as the Woodpecker, for the same reasons as in the original with the messages. PTA gives his signature style and dysfunctional family themes with Eric Roberts and Paul Dano, a chilling performance by Joaquin Phoenix, and then is kind of what you're going to be advertised as in this. The plot-wise, it splits following our detective and Joaquin Phoenix on his kills until they finally meet at the end when Dano's father becomes a potential victim. Ace is finally able to gain his confidence and is tracked down the Woodpecker with a hostage. We get the detective's kind of big final revelation scene about putting all the pieces together. It seems like this kind of triumphant moment that he's going to, go in and kind of win the day kind of deal. But he's thrown off after he sees that his father is the one that is the hostage. After finally reconciling him with him earlier in the movie, him being held hostage drives Ace mad and agrees to let the serial killer go if he just lets his father leave. He would throw the investigation and say that he was wrong. He didn't want to lose what he already lost once in his life. After he agrees, Ace lets his guard down, and we have a close-up shot on Dano's face as he gets shot and killed in the head by the Woodpecker in front of his father. The Woodpecker leaves, continuing his killing spree. So we have kind of a dramatic, like a, kind of crazy ending kind of deal there. I think it's going to be like talked about, like that ending can be talked about for sure with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Okay, interesting. All right, Joe, what do you got for us?
All right, so I went in a little bit different of a direction. Let's see. So the rule I used for mine is I made mine a foreign film, specifically a South Korean foreign film. My director is Kim Ji-wook, who directed I Saw the Devil and The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, and I Saw the Devil is kind of the tone I want to go for this. I didn't really name my characters because I don't really know like Korean names that well, but my older detective character is played by Kang Ho-sung, who is the main dad in Parasite, and he was also in A Taxi Driver. My little bit younger detective is played by Gong Yoo, who is the dad in Train to Busan. And then the role of the Woodpecker in mine is played by Ma Dong-seok, who is in The Outlaws, Train to Busan, and then he's going to be in Marvel's The Eternals as well. So in my movie, the older detective is a widowed single father to a teen daughter who is about to head to America for college. He is dealing with the feeling of loneliness when he and his partner get a murder case where a body was staged under a tree with a message carved in. The message is a riddle. Confused by the riddle, the detectives aren't able to solve it until a week later when another body is found under a tree with a new riddle. Eventually, the slightly younger detective realizes that the riddles point to the next victim. And based on when the bodies are discovered, the two detectives realize that the murders must happen at the same time every week, so the serial killer must know their schedules. They solve the latest riddle and realize it must be close to murder time. They discover the apartment of the victim is wide open, and they're too late. About 3 hours later, the next body and clue come in. It takes them a while to solve the next clue, and the older detective doesn't like the answer. The next victim will be his daughter. They realize the serial killer they have dubbed the Woodpecker is watching them. From there, it becomes a cat and mouse game and finding the killer before his daughter dies. And that is my pitch.
All right. Okay. I like both pitches. This will be a good fight. Tristan, before they kind of get into their arguments, do you have any questions for them?
Just a little bit for Bobby. I think Paul Thomas Anderson is a director whose tone is really versatile. Like sometimes he's really goofy and funny, and sometimes he can be kind of serious and very controlled and almost dry intentionally, I think. And I want to get a little bit better of an idea of what style is PTA bringing to this movie, and why is he the one who would do this? I think he makes his choices very deliberately what movies he directs. So why would this be one that pulls him out to do it?
I think this one would be more of the like, not out there crazy, but it's more of a tense kind of maybe like a There Will Be Blood performance level is what he wants to get out of Joaquin Phoenix. So he's kind of getting that that type of like, that's what I want him to bring, is his style and what he can bring to the characters, and bring like the tenseness that he can bring to some of the scenes and deliver the crazy ending in a way that makes sense with his style. Because I think a lot of people that would just kind of fall flat or be just like kind of throw you off. But I think his visual style of Paul Dano's face in that scene would fit him.
I like that answer, and I don't have any questions for Joe. I got a good picture of what his tone and everything was. I'm sure it was a much more Johnny leaning pitch, going by the director
That was
choice
more
and
of a
everything.
me leaning pitch of I think that'd be a cool like killer movie, but
Yeah, I
So,
like
yeah, I got
both. You
no
two,
questions for Joe, but I'm curious if Johnny has anything. It was a
yeah,
Johnny
you two
pitch.
picked my two of my favorite directors of all time. So it's going to be an interesting fight, different tones. I really like a good kind of like a mystery when it comes to these films and like the killers. And it sounds like, I know Bobby for sure, you know who the killer is the whole time. Joe, is yours like more of a mystery, or is it like I Saw the Devil, like you know who the killer is from the start?
mine, I would say like halfway through it's a mystery, solving these riddles, trying to figure out, and then about the time they realize like who that they're watching him, they during that week, because there's a week between murders, during that week they know he's watching the daughter, so they eventually figure out who the guy is, and that's when it becomes that's when they figure it out, and then it's more about chasing him, but they also have to, they can't just protect, part of it is they can't just protect the daughter because he's their only way to capture, or she's their only way to capture him.
Okay. All right. Interesting. I like both of those. So we'll do this. So Bobby gave his pitch first. So he will make the first argument. So Tristan will have his stopwatch, and we'll, tell you when that timer goes. So we'll just start it whenever Bobby starts talking.
All right, so what I want to start with is it's sometimes hard to fight some of the foreign movies, but I can tell you with the plot that's kind of given, it sounds like a well done but a little bit more generic kind of mystery thriller crime drama. Whereas mine, I think that Paul Thomas Anderson brings something very different in a character study, especially when you do see the killer, but you don't know who he is or his background, and that's what the detective is figuring out through his messages and through his investigation, is actually giving the character backstory of who this guy is, kind of profiling him to be able to find him. So you're revealing that throughout the movie. You get family drama with him and his father that comes back at the end, and I think you get a better ending rather than just like it's a race to find the girl at the end, which we've seen, and it can be done well and it could be solid, but I think mine would stand out a little more than your plot.
10 more seconds.
Yeah, that's all I have then, so I'm good.
Surrendering your time. Joe, you got a minute.
All right, am I starting now?
Yep.
All right, so my whole thing with yours is like I understand the character study thing, but I think part of it too is if the killer gets away, it's going to be a very unsatisfying ending. I just think most people walking out of that theater are going to feel like disappointed. I don't know if the character study aspect of it will work as much. And I just that's the main thing against yours. Like I understand with Paul Dano and Joaquin Phoenix, like the performances will be good, but I just feel like regardless of that, yours is going to be a very unsatisfying ending. And I think the riddle aspect in the original was one of the more intriguing aspects, where I feel like yours is more just like messages. Seconds. And I think without the riddles, it doesn't feel like the Woodpecker that people know, and that was the best aspect of that movie. So I think yours lacking the riddles is one of its main problems. And that I'll surrender the rest of my time.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll switch over to Bobby then. And Bobby, you got 2 minutes to tell us why Joe's is actually terrible and yours is so much better than his.
So I'll start off. I think that kind of the subversion of that like happy ending with a lot of character pieces is kind of what I'm going for. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson can pull that off and make it like a very talked about thing of like, I can't believe they did that. He was a sympathetic character, because he's going to start out he's like shy. He stumbles into leading the investigation because he finds the first body. and has like a good track on the messages. He's very good at the riddles, which it's riddles, but it's not like a mystery to us. It's a mystery to him in order to figure out who it is. That's what I was saying. It's like that type of thing. And then you see his confidence grow. You see him reconcile with his father, and then you get that kind of crazy ending with him being killed. And you're also following Joaquin Phoenix for so long in the movie that he's almost they're the two like lead characters. So one of them is going to win. You really don't know who is going to win, and it's going back and forth kind of throughout the movie. So I think that he can pull that off as well. And then yours, again, my biggest attack with it, because I don't know much about your directors and people that are in it, is it sounds like a solid crime drama with nothing too special about it.
1 minute warning, Bobby.
And mine at least keeps the elements of what was at least intriguing in the original, and then expands on it and throws some more intriguing aspects with the characters rather than just the plot and the story into it. And then also Paul Thomas Anderson can get such good performances out of people that you're locked in the entire time. There you go.
Any last statements, Bobby?
That's it.
All right, Joe, you got 2 minutes. Defend yours and then get some attacks on Bobby's.
All right, I feel as far as my performances, I feel like the three leads in my movie can definitely pull great performances, as well as, having their director direct them. And I think as far as character study goes, I think part of mine is like a character study on the lead police officer, because you're kind of exploring his day-to-day life and his personality, and having him dealing with the fact that he's going to be all alone when his daughter goes to America, and he's having to deal with that. And then at the end, where he has to risk the one thing he cares about to capture this serial killer. And it's kind of this thing of, what does he choose? Like, does he do his job? Does he do his duty? Or does he like stick with family and hide his daughter away, and then risk the case and risk somebody else getting murdered? So you have character study aspects in mine as well. And as far as yours, I still feel like, regardless of how much we follow the serial killer, having the serial killer walk away and win at the end is still going to be, it's still not going to be a great ending to that movie. People are going to be like, oh, I was all on board with that movie, and then the ending happened and I was out. And that's what I got.
All right. Since Johnny's making the final call, I'm going to give my thoughts really quick before we hear his. I thought Paul Thomas Anderson was an interesting choice for this. It wouldn't necessarily be the person I would go to for like a crime murder kind of movie like this, but I think it paid off pretty well. I'm leaning towards Bobby's direction here. I think his is just a bit more creative for me. I think Joe's sounds good. It sounds like a really entertaining crime thriller, but I just think it will be one that kind of blends in among the mess of all the other kind of crime thrillers. And I know for Johnny, South Korean movies are something that stands out a bit more than they do for me, so that this might be one that worked a bit more for him. But for me, it would be one where I'd be going through the Netflix and I'd be on South Korean dramas and I'd see that one and be like, oh, that one looks pretty good, and then just go past to something else, and it just doesn't seem like one that would stick with me compared to Bobby's. But I'm curious on Johnny's thoughts here. I'm not 100%, but I just felt a little bit more memorable towards Bobby's.
It's tough because, as I said, I love both directors. I like the directions you guys went, but I did have some problems with both pitches. I would have liked, with Joe, especially with the director he chose and saying it's more I Saw the Devil, I kind of like the mystery aspect, but it kind of sounds like you combined Memories of a Murder and I Saw the Devil in terms of like plot, and I would have liked you to go either all mystery until the end and maybe you never find out who the killer is, or you know who the killer is from the start and you get to see him do these brutal murders, from the very beginning, because that in I Saw the Devil, obviously the whole time who the serial killer is. And Bobby, it would be very distracting for me for Paul Dano, who's going to be the Riddler, to be solving riddles the whole movie. Personally, would take me out of it a lot. I don't know if you considered that in your pitch, but I was thinking about it. But even that being said, Paul Dano gives his best performances when he is the person that you are rooting for to die in the end or hate or whatever. So I like in There Will Be Blood, he's never better in that, or even in Prisoners and things like that. He always plays like the real evil dude best. So I don't love the casting of him as like your lead. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn, and I think in the end, if I have to compare them to just like visually what I see from what I'm getting, Joe's sounds like Joe sounds like a movie I would definitely check out. Bobby's is one that I would see, but it sounds more like an Inherent Vice, and I feel like that's like the lower end of Paul Thomas Anderson type of stuff. So I think in the end I would go for Joe, but I was torn the entire time up until I just said Joe. So that was like 51-49. I'm gonna go Joe. And that was close though.
I put
all right.
Joe in the lead 1-0 on the
Oh
match.
yeah, as it should be.
All right. So this is interesting with the new format because there's one that I definitely want to get to, but and I love it, but it's definitely a all or nothing. You're going to think it's ridiculous, or you're going to love it like I do. So I think I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to do Flaming Hots.
Okay.
Flaming Hots.
Flaming Hots.
I'll let Joe go first on this.
Flaming Hots, because I have a attachment to the source material. There's a pretty big twist ending at the end of the original Flaming Hots too, so I'm curious if you guys are going to adapt the twist ending at all, or have any kind of
There's
twist.
some type of ending.
Always ends.
There's an ending. It ends.
Does the serial killer get away in yours too?
Kinda. No, just kidding.
I thought it was weird that in the South Korean movie the guy doesn't get away, and then in the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, I would expect both of those to have been flipped as far as just movies that I've seen. But all right, so Flaming Hots, getting back to that, came out in 1940. The director was George Stevens. It got an 82% of Rotten Tomatoes. This slapstick comedy romance follows Cary Grant's Nick Rogers, a charismatic con artist who poses as a firefighter, and Dorothy Lee's Minnie Handy, a beautiful woman who begins starting fires to see him. Based on the stage play of the same name, Flaming Hots was buried by MGM when the studio decided to pull the movie in favor of His Girl Friday, leaving it vaulted for decades before a home video release in 1986. So you can imagine a movie coming out or being made in 1940, coming out in 1986 was not the most popular thing. Gotta love the name Minnie Handy though. So Bobby, you seem confident, or you're confident.
I love my pitch.
By a lot.
I love my pitch, but it's going to probably split people. Is all I'll say.
All
just
right,
because
I'm excited. I think it's good news for you that Tristan is making the final call on what could be a ridiculous pitch.
Yeah.
So
it's not as bad as some other ones I had, but honestly, I just like this one. So,
well,
but like I said, I'll have Joe.
Or
Joe's going to go first. We'll change it up from last time.
All right, Joe. Let's hear your Flaming Hots movie, which is not the biopic of the guy who made Flaming Hot Cheetos, which is coming out sometime.
Maybe not, because now that whole story's
probably not
under contention, and they're saying the whole story's false. But so the director of my movie is Christopher Landon, who directed Happy Death Day, Fricke, and Scout's Guide to a Zombie Apocalypse. My Nick Waller is going to be played by Tom Holland, and then my Minnie Handy is going to be played by Zoe Deutsch. So my film follows a similar plot to the first one. However, instead of a slapstick romance movie, I am making it more of a thriller comedy, mainly because I couldn't think of a way to have a fun romantic movie with a female lead who lights buildings on fire in any way that I thought would be not like crazy. So Nick Waller is a con artist who poses as a firefighter in bars frequented by rich divorcees. He flirts with older women and goes back to their house, and when they are drunk and passed out, he steals their valuables. When the bartender at one of the bars he frequents, Minnie, becomes obsessed with him and is curious why he never talks to her and only the older women, she begins lighting fires to get his attention, thinking that he is in fact a firefighter. However, Nick is never one of the firefighters who shows up to the fires. Minnie corners Nick one day at the bar. She says there are a lot of fires in the area and is curious why he isn't ever there. Nick realizes Minnie must have started the fires, and he realizes he is in over his head. Nick decides to contact his father, who hasn't talked to him since he found out he became a con man. His father is Roy Waller, Nicolas Cage's character from Matchstick Men, and that's the rule I'm using, is a character made famous by Nicolas Cage. A movie about a con man who reforms his ways when he realizes he might have a daughter. The overall movie is about Nick and his father Roy working together to pull off a con to get Minnie to check herself into a mental institution, and that is my movie.
All right.
I'm guessing Bobby used a similar rule on this one.
Couldn't tell.
Bobby, what is your pitch?
Mine's a little different in that I did keep it a comedy, but but it's not like slapstick. So I did. The director is Kay Cannon, who did Blockers, which I think was directed very well, and took someone who I think is very hit or miss in John Cena and as a lead, and put in a good performance in there and made a funny movie. And my lead male character in the movie is going to be Nicolas Cage as the character Cameron Poe from the movie Con Air. My mini handy in the movie is going to be played by Jane Lynch, who a lot of people know from a lot of things, but Glee, and she's a voice in like Wreck-It Ralph and a lot of stuff. But she is a funny kind of plays an intimidating character, like kind of a lot of the time like intimidating funny character, and that's what I'm going for. So after the events of Con Air, Cameron Poe used his background in the service to become a firefighter, giving himself a new start. He's still married, but when he rescues a woman named Minnie from a fire, his world is turned upside down. Minnie falls hard for the Fabio-haired firefighter and starts setting fires as an excuse to see him. He constantly turns her down because of his wife, while also finding her incredibly intimidating and creepy, leading to funny scenes between the two of them as she kind of overpowers Nicolas Cage's character throughout the movie. Nice. I don't know what's going on right now, but
With the ball
back.
yeah, yes, I get it, but yeah. So near the end of the movie, a lot of the movie is the back and forth of like it's a funny. Cameron Poe is still the kind of shy, like Southern whatever character, whatever accent he's doing in Con Air, and she's the intimidating, crazy, starting fires woman who's fallen for him. And near the end of the movie, it seems like finally Poe is like given in and starts to fall for Minnie back and cheat on his wife, when it's revealed that he was working with the cops to track her down because he knows she's setting all these crazy fires, and he's like, no, you're insane, and has her arrested at the end. But yeah, it's a weird romantic comedy thing where one side is definitely not loving it and one is very, and then we have a crazy Jane Lynch. So I think Nicolas Cage can put a fun like performance in, and Jane Lynch could have a good like dynamic with him. So there's my movie.
Interesting. I'm glad I'm not making the final call on these. And that being said, I guess I'll ask a question. You know what? No, I'll just let Tristan get to his question, because I don't really have. I kind of understand what both of your movies are. Maybe not for the better, but Tristan definitely has a question for you.
Look, I mean, I understand both of your movies pretty well. I don't have a ton of questions, but I was hoping for some good plot twists. You know, I mentioned that there was good twist ending, but I think we can make up for that. All right. So there's some really good quotable lines in this movie. So I want Joe, just give me one of your favorite lines from Flamin' House. Just quote it off the top of your head, any line.
Oh, in my movie?
Yeah, any of your best lines.
Oh, there's a scene where Tom Holland is finally convinced his dad to work with him again to pull off this con, and to get Zoe Deutsch's character to basically check herself into a mental institution. And because of the whole, like, the Flaming Hots title and everything, and her setting houses on fire, and his character infamously wears sunglasses in Matchstick Men, so as he's putting on his sunglasses, he just looks at the camera, it's like, we're going to burn it all down. And it's just a cheesy comedy Nicolas Cage line.
I like that. Bobby, you got any comedy lines? You got Nic Cage as your lead, so I hope you got some good quotes.
I think that Nicolas Cage is going to play it completely seriously, but give some like really dumb fire puns throughout the entire movie without really knowing what he's doing, and so that's going to bring some of the comedy. So I have a burning question for you, or and like something about burning love, or talking about getting heartburn from things, like stuff that is like so stupid that as he keeps doing it, it gets funnier and funnier as you kind of catch on. So I think just those quotes as they add up is going to be like, what is going on here type of thing, like just kind of a weird awkward. I'm going for a very awkward comedy. I really like. I think that can.
Any references to the great Hot Love?
It could be. Yeah, they have. I mean, there's almost a hot love scene in the end when the building's on fire, and
That's true.
So
I would argue any scene with Nicolas Cage is a hot love scene.
And maybe he was delighted to see her. I mean,
Jesus Christ. Okay, Tristan, get to your question.
We gotta get the argument. Bobby, argue with Joe.
No, I start first.
Joe, you argue. Why is yours better? Bobby
So
say, what
my,
were you
my
gonna say?
main attacks against Bobby is I feel like it makes a funny pitch, and I think it would be a solid SNL sketch. I just think overall for a 2-hour movie or hour 45 movie, I just think it's going to lose a lot of its steam. And then the one thing of like having this be Cameron Poe going up against Jane Lynch, especially if that's the rule you want to use, I'm going to say it's bad rule usage for the story you did, because I don't see him being intimidated by Jane Lynch. He was arrested because his hands were registered as deadly weapons in Con Air. So the fact that you're having him use his brains instead of his strength to fight Jane Lynch, it just feels like it doesn't flow. It doesn't make sense with the Con Air that we know, and I feel like it just completely is like it would have made more sense to use like a different Nicolas Cage character. I feel like he used the one
10 more
character that
seconds,
doesn't
Joe.
really fit with of using the character known for his fighting ability that is afraid to fight Jane Lynch.
All right, Bobby, you respond to that, or you get some attacks on
Well,
Joe?
but he was all he was also a gentleman that wouldn't hit a woman and wouldn't like. So I think it's more of that he is like, I don't really know what to do with the situation. And he's also, it's years later, he's calmed down. He's a firefighter. He's not going out and like fighting people. He's trying to use his strength and stuff to save people. So you get the epic, like when he does his rescues and stuff, it's like the epic Cameron Poe, moving fire, stuff out of the way and trying to get to people and rescue them. But then like the dynamic change from that to when he's faced with Jane Lynch being like, I have no idea what to do with this person, is I think that can be a funny dynamic personally.
You got 20 seconds, Bobby.
And then with yours, like you said, mine sounds like an SNL sketch or something. Yours just sounds like a little more of just a generic, horror comedy or whatever you're doing with yours, with the people setting them on fire, the house on fire, and it didn't really stand out personally. In mine, I think would at least stand out and be talked about.
All right, Joe, you're gonna get 2 minutes. Tell us why yours is better and Bobby's is worse.
Yeah, yours might be talked about, but I don't know if it's going to be for the right reasons. Mine, I feel like it'd be interesting because you have Zoe Deutsch, who normally plays like these kooky, weird characters, but they're usually like well-meaning, good-hearted people. And mine, she's just completely like off her rocker, like I'm lighting houses on fire. And to the point where like you meet her in the bar for the first time and she's kind of like your typical character that she plays. And then very quickly you realize that she is legitimately dangerous with the fact that she's letting these houses on fire. And I think it would be fun to see Nicolas Cage back kind of in a mixture of his character from Matchstick Men as a con man, coming back as an older version of that character, getting back into cons again, but in this type of, horror comedy, being afraid of this young girl trying to, like, working with his son on basically this date from hell. And I think it could be, an interesting concept. And I think I also like the play of the titles together, where his character was from Matchstick Men and then this is a movie about fires. So I like that aspect too, if they kind of go together. And I feel like it's also a continuation of his character from Matchstick Men, of being this reformed con man, and now he has to go back into it, and it ties to the movie ended with his wife pregnant in that one, and now his son's all grown up, played by Tom Holland. And I think it'd be kind of interesting to see Tom Holland and Nicolas Cage work together. And that's all I've got.
All right. I got one final question for you, Joe, just for a couple of seconds here. Let's talk a bit about Tom Holland's character. I think Tom Holland, outside of Spider-Man, has been kind of mixed in his movie work, so I just want to get why was Tom Holland your choice as your lead over other actors?
Tom Holland was my choice. Number one, I think he kind of fit the age demographic I was going for, but I also feel like he could play, like when he's Peter Parker, it's kind of like that mix of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, where I feel like when he's pretending to be the firefighter and he's hitting on the older women, I could kind of see him as like this kind of confident guy, but then when it comes to Zoe Deutsch and her craziness and having to go to back to his dad for help, I could see him more as like the scared and intimidated and unsure what to do kind of character. He plays more as Peter Parker. So that was kind of my thought process for why him.
All right. I gotta be the one making the final call here, unfortunately. But Johnny,
So
give me your thoughts.
Yeah, he gets 2 minutes.
Bobby
right?
I have 2 minutes.
Bobby hasn't
Bobby's
gone
2
yet.
minutes.
Yeah.
Go for it, Bobby. I was distracted by Joe's.
Yeah. The one thing, just because I feel like I've been defending my movie most of the time, is with Joe. Again, your Tom Holland choice. I do like Tom Holland as an actor and as Spider-Man, but he plays very young. He looks very young. One thing that was criticized in the movie Cherry that just came out is that he still looks like a teenager in that role. And so you're having him like hit on women and be this like confident guy. I don't think he's the right choice for that. I actually see that coming off and playing very strange to me. And so I don't think he's the right choice to be Nicolas Cage's son, personally, especially with his character Matchstick Men and him having that personality. With mine, again, it's a weird concept. It's bizarre. It's gonna have its audience, but I think it's going to be a lot. Again, stand out. It gives a character like Con Air or like Cameron Poe from Con Air a chance to come back and at least be like entertaining and charismatic, because he's such a weird. He does that weird accent and like this weird thing, and it just completely works. To put him in something that could as like, you know, a love romantic comedy, but give him that the chance to kind of shine again as a lead in that role as this character, I think is something I want to see. And I think Jane Lynch, again, I just like their dynamic. I've repeated that a few times, so that's fine. But again, yeah, my main argument for yours, again, it sounds a little more generic as a horror comedy. I don't love the casting of Tom Holland. I don't think it's going to stand out as much as mine when you are scrolling through and looking at different movies, like kind of Tristan pointed out in the first at the first pitches.
All right, Johnny, you got any final thoughts or any last second
Am I
questions?
allowed to
for
make
anybody?
like one quick, like one sentence thing of
Go for
like,
it, Joe.
My thing of why I cast Tom Holland is like part of him playing young, is I thought it was part of the reason that would set off Zoe Deutsch is she's like, why is he's like 19, 20 years old, why is he going after these 45-year-old women and not me? And that was kind of my, just to clarify.
Yeah, I have no issue with the Tom Holland casting. I'll just say that. I mean, I can't see him being spawned from Nicolas Cage, but other than that, I mean, I think people kind of overlook The Devil All the Time on Netflix, and Tom Holland gives a really, really great performance in that, and he doesn't look too young to be in that role or anything like that. I believed him in that. It kind of reminded me of like when Shia LaBeouf started doing movies like Lawless and people took him seriously. I think Tom Holland is kind of due to kind of do that, break away from what he's doing, but I didn't see Cherry. But that being said, I don't know. It's tough because honestly, I'm not really interested in either movie. I think Bobby's would have been better with a different. If you had just a straight up like different lead, and then he recruited Cameron Poe as a firefighter to help him, I think you could have done something a little more interesting as far as like a story dynamic. I don't love the Jane Lynch being obsessed with Cameron Poe type of thing. I don't think that works, especially with him being such a family man and stuff like that in the first one. I don't think necessarily plays to your movie's strengths and where directions you could have gone. And you know, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I'm not making the final decision. If I had to call it, it'd probably be as close as the last one. I'd probably end up going with Joe's just to see something with a director I like and something going forward a little better. I don't see Cameron Poe fitting into the world of blockers, and I think at least everything Joe pitched I could see in a movie. It might not be a great movie, but it at least all fits, and I don't think Bobby had elements that fit together. So that's where I think I'd end up going, but Tristan is making the final call. We'll see what he has to say.
Yeah, I'm curious because Bobby mentioned that this was one that he thought was going to be the really big risk and the one he thought would be the crazy one. And
I was expecting more craziness.
There's actually one more
crazy.
crazier one, but I said this is one I wanted to get to that at least is somewhat crazy. But
and
there
I
is
think
one more.
Cameron Poe character choice is probably what is holding it back a bit, because I think that there's better Cage characters that you could fit in that role, and I think like to make it work with the character we know from the original, he had to do a little bit of maneuvering. I think he would have worked a bit better as like a supporting character. I'm Joe. I'm mixed because I don't think Tom Holland necessarily has the chops to pull off like this dashing, handsome kind of older man who's hitting on these older women and pulling it off. I think he naturally gravitates towards like the young kind of look, but I'd like to see him try something new. And I think using Nic Cage in a supporting role, I think, is a bit better for this kind of a rule. So by a sliver, I'm going to lean towards Joe on this one, which is surprising me.
Wow. So I 51-49 on 2 decisions. That's tough, especially in this format.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have to go with something you're confident in next.
I will say Flaming Hots was the one movie I wasn't ever going to pick if it was my rule to pick, so I'm happy.
Yeah, that was a surprising choice for that pitch. Bobby just wanted to shout out Cameron Poe, so I can
Yeah.
bring the bunny back out.
It's tough, and I'm getting used to this new format because there's a lot I wanted to say that you guys then brought up as a fight against Cameron Poe, and I'm like, I didn't have a chance to, or like didn't think of saying it in that amount of time, but with the family aspect. But that's all right, no big deal. Let's go to let's do Metroid. I like Samus.
Yeah, I was hoping we would get to this one. All right, Metroid, based on the popular game, which I believe came out in Japan in 1986. The film came out in 2001. It got a 13% of Rotten Tomatoes, partly because it was directed by Alex Proyas. Samus Aran, played by Mia Jovovich, is a space bounty hunter who finds an ancient spacesuit. This suit provides her with the abilities to protect the galaxy from space pirates attempting to harness the control of the Metroid race of parasitic aliens. The film was rushed into development after the success of The Matrix, and the lackluster special effects were one of the many reasons the film bombed. So that is the version of Metroid we got. I'm interested to see where you guys go with it. Bobby, you going first?
I'll go first. Yeah, I'll go first. So because of my rule choice, I really didn't cast anyone because it's mostly going to be voice actors. I am making this a foreign film, and it's an anime. So this is going to be a Metroid anime film directed by Tetsuya Nagamine, who directed the One Piece movie as well as Dragon Ball Super Broly, which was a very big hit and one of the better Dragon Ball movies that has come out within the past few years. Really good visual style, really good action, a lot of stuff that you would want to see in a Metroid game adaptation. My movie is going to be like generally based on the story of Metroid Fusion, if anyone has played the games, but it's going to be changed up a little bit just so that it's not a straight up adaptation of a singular game. Samus Aran, a former Galactic Federation soldier turned bounty hunter, explores the surface of planet SR388 with a crew from the Biological Space Laboratories, or BSL. In a tense scene reminiscent of the Alien franchise, she's attacked by a parasitic organism known as X, which is a variant of the Metroid aliens. After her ship crashes, she is rushed to the Galactic Federation for treatment and given a vaccine from Metroid blood. She recovers from the parasite, but now has some of the weaknesses of the actual Metroids, including sensitivity to cold and other things that'll be like, power as she's fighting others. It'll come up throughout the movie. But now she can also absorb Parasite X for energy because during the surgery for her treatment, part of her suit is now bound to her. It's called the Power Suit. It's like one of the most famous things in the Metroid franchise to be kind of shown. It's a really popular thing in there to put in the movie. Throughout the movie, there's flashbacks to her as a soldier in the Federation, so we get kind of her backstory with her and her commander, Adam, who died in a tragic incident that made her leave the Federation and become a bounty hunter. With a crew and the AI on her new ship, she investigates the parasitic planet. The AI is very cryptic with her throughout the movie, and you kind of have this back and forth, and you get the idea that the AI might have like its own agenda as it is from the Federation. Samus is able to find out that higher-ups in the Federation are planning on using the parasite as a biological weapon since it absorbs energy and can recreate beings with even more power, which created a Dark Samus as an enemy due to her earlier infection in the beginning scene, so that becomes kind of one of the main villains is Dark Samus, as well as the actual Metroid, the X parasites. We also get the reveal that the AI in her ship is the consciousness of her old commander, Adam, big character in the game, who is able to recognize Samus and then help her instead of following the Federation's plans after he kind of becomes aware of that and gets memories. So these are just a lot of the subplots. I wanted to include a lot of stuff that Metroid fans would enjoy, but the overall story is a parasite attack. You get government corruption. You get tenseness on a planet with like alien type scenes, and the finale is a fight between Samus and Dark Samus that results in Samus sending a space station crashing into the Federation's headquarters. So it shows off a lot of the powers from the game with the power suit, a lot of the visuals people love. Relatively simple story with a lot of good character stuff in it that is kind of more of the complex part of it. And I think animes can pull that off pretty well.
Okay. All right, Joe, what do you got for us?
All right, what in a slightly different direction. All right. So the director I chose for mine is Alex Garland. And then for my Samus, and this is where my rule comes in, I chose the rule of putting an actor on the map, and I chose Catherine Winnick. She got her first black belt at 13, started 3 Taekwondo schools by 21, and she was nominated for Critics' Choice Award for her role on the show Vikings, where she is most known for, and she was also known for doing her own stunts on the show. And I also have various bounty hunters played by people Alex Garland has worked with in the past. You have Carl Urban, Nick Offerman, Oscar Isaac, and Benedict Wong. So in my movie, the Dragon Pirate Ridley launches an attack on the planet K2L to steal its resources. Samus, a young girl, sees Ridley and tries to initially befriend him. However, Ridley attacks her and she is saved by her mom, who Ridley ultimately kills. Samus' father dies creating and detonating a bomb to kill the pirates. Samus is adopted by the people of Zebes and trained by them. Many years later, Ridley and the space pirates attack a Galactic Federation research vessel to steal a bunch of parasitic lifeforms known as Metroids. The Metroids can latch onto any living organism and drain its life energy. The space pirates plan on using them to kill anyone who opposes them. The Galactic Federation, as a last resort, hires a group of bounty hunters to attack the pirates and destroy the Metroids before it's too late. The bounty hunters drop one by one at the hands of the pirates. The last one alive is Samus, just like Ripley was in the movie Alien, which was a big inspiration for the video game. However, I would have the other bounty hunters die relatively early on, leaving Samus all alone. Samus, going through the base, finds Ridley and must confront and face off with the creature that left her an orphan. And that is my pitch.
All right, interesting pitches. We got an anime versus a live action version of a video game, so it's going to be an interesting fight with being so different stylistically. So Tristan, you have any questions for them?
I don't have a ton of questions. I got one question for Joe. Is that Alex Garland's movies are typically very much about something, about technology, about humanity, about some kind of deeper theme. So what is your Metroid movie about?
Mine is more like, deeper theme. Mine is almost more about like family and found family and like her, but like the bounty hunters over time somewhat become her found family, and then she obviously lost her real parents, so it's kind of about that and like the importance of it.
And for Bobby, I have one question for you. Just a little bit of a defense for a second of your director choice, not as an attack necessarily, but why did you choose to go for more of an action director, more so than like more of a horror animated director, or like a thriller kind of director?
I named just like the 2 big things that he's done, but he's done such a variety of anime films, and all of them tend to be received well. I think he can pull off just about any style he's going to put to screen. But visually, what I really wanted from him is visually his animes look stunning. So that when you have space and like vastness and like the ships and you have the planets, and I really wanted to like colors to pop and things to stand out and that. So that's what I was going for.
Yeah, that's all the questions I got. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, my main question is, I kind of was thinking the same thing along with Joe. His doesn't seem to be like as science-based as I'd expect, like an Alex Garland movie to have been. I would have liked maybe some more like alternate reality type of stuff or parallel universe type of stuff, especially opening that up to like a Dark Samus type of thing would have fit in better. But I don't really have a question for him. Bobby, my question mainly for you is, I get you chose your director because he has made like a Dragon Ball movie and stuff like that, but none of those are exactly like theatrical movies that have success.
Yeah,
they don't seem to be a movie. But they're not movies that I would go see. I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball Z, but there's a 0% chance that I would ever go see a Dragon Ball movie in a movie theater. Maybe at most I would sit down and watch it streaming. What about your movie would get someone like me or someone who's not as much into anime to go check your movie out?
So I'll start with this is probably just went over your head, but Dragon Ball Super Broly became like one of the biggest anime films box office wise in the United States and Japan ever. When it came out, it was very, very well done and popular, and actually did bring people in, especially people here, like friends that knew Dragon Ball Z, like brought people in to go see it because they're like, it's a really good movie. Like, we'll go back and see it, and like, I'll take you and introduce you to the franchise. So if he can do that with something that's been around forever, I think he can do that same type of thing with Samus, with Metroid. and he just has the experience. So if you give him the right material and people are interested in Metroid, they're gonna check this out. Or if they see a cool action like thriller like thing with kind of some of the horror aspects of it. But Samus is a very popular character. They'll recognize from Super Smash Bros. And be like, oh, what's this story? You need someone with the experience that has done this with a franchise before, that has drawn people in. So I think he has actually shown that he can do that.
Okay. And then my other just quick question for you is just to picture how it goes, because Joe picked an actress that looks a lot like how, especially like Super Smash Bros. And Nintendo has kind of embraced like the more white blonde Samus. Is yours going to look similar to that, or is yours going to have more of like an Asian style character, how like the game originally was in the 80s?
She's going to be more Asian style. It's going to be like, it's going to be mainly focused as a foreign film, where it is set like this is the Japanese Metroid. And if it has crossover appeal here because it's so well done, then it does. But so that's why they would give that like that look to Samus.
Okay. All right. Well, that being said, we've kind of gotten everything, I think, question-wise answered, and I think we got some good answers for those. So Bobby started first, so he'll do his argument. His 1 minute on the clock starts.
So I'll just say, I think that Alex Garland, I think, to me, like you guys brought it up, but I was writing it down as he was doing this, is that's the complete wrong choice for this type of movie. I like Alex Garland given a restricted or lower budget thing that he can do whatever he wants and put his own story and his own he puts his own themes and adds crazy endings like Annihilation that would never happen in something that's big budget. I want him to put his stamp on something. I don't want him to do a big budget thing unless he gets complete freedom. And it sounds like yours is a pretty generic story. I don't really want Alex Garland to be someone behind a generic story, because I think it's kind of a waste of his talents. And I don't think it shows up what he can do. And you can put just about anyone else into your story that you're telling, and it would be at least well told. With his, it's like, I don't see what he's bringing. For mine, I think that what people are finding, because anime has been getting more and more popular nowadays, like with streaming, with movies, like I said, with Dragon Ball Super Broly, with what's the most recent movie? I'm not going to try to come up with it because I have a time limit, but Demon Hunter. That had a huge like crossover play. So I think introducing Samus and Metroid, which is kind of a dead video game franchise, they don't make as many as they do, as they should, of the character, to reintroduce Samus in the anime form, which is more in the style of the video game, which shows off what she's really like and what the game is like and what the franchise should be, I think is the way to go, instead of a live action version of something that's kind of fading in popularity other than in Super Smash Bros. I don't know how much time I have left, but yeah.
Yeah, 20 more seconds, but I'll give them over to Joe. Joe, you got a minute or so. Go for it.
All right, yeah, so my main thing is I started taking notes on Bobby's, and like people may be like, oh, mine's a simple story and mine's generic, and I feel like that was the simpleness of mine was a choice, as I wanted to make it more accessible to people that weren't Metroid fans. And my main thing against Bobby's is I started taking notes, and then I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about. And I feel like if you're not a Metroid fan, his movie's just like not appealing. Like, I feel like it's too complicated and there's too much going on with like Samus and Dark Samus and X and all of that. I just feel like if you don't know anything about Metroid and you start watching trailers for this, you're just gonna be like, yeah, that was, even if you're down to watch an anime, you're gonna be like, that's like too confusing for me, and you're gonna be checked out. And I feel like as far as most franchises go, like I feel like this is very easily could be a live action franchise. So I feel like, you know, that's what people would rather see, especially with graphics and stuff getting better in the video games. I feel like it's already kind of just a 4-hour animated video games are essentially like 6-hour animated movies as they already are. So I feel like making it animated is like doesn't really add much. And so that's
all right, we're now swapping over a bit.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
2 minutes on the clock for you, Bobby. Go for it.
Okay, so I think part of, because I am a fan of Metroid, I got into the, like, I was saying a lot of things, but the plot, if I'm just going to break down the basic plot of my movie that you can put into a trailer that would make sense, is that Samus goes to a planet, gets infected by an alien, it ends up giving her powers, including the suit. There you go. So that's like the main suit that people know. and then it is a thriller of a team on a planet investigating, and you get alien tense type scenes. You get character like stuff that's not going to be shown in the trailer. Like there's character stuff in every movie with her and Adam and all that. And then the end of it's the Federation, it's a corrupt government fight, bam. So it's like you can put that in a trailer, and there's your story. Then when you get in there, you get the more complexities of okay, here's a little bit more of her origin. This is how she got there, sprinkled in. Like, it's not like this huge distracting subplot, but that ties back in because of the introduction of Adam, which is a big character in the game, in all the games. So you at least have that character in the movie. And yours, again, I think it's the choice of Alex Garland. I think it's the choice of doing it live action at a point when, which it sounds like it's a super big budget live action movie for a franchise that, like I said, is fading. I think the reintroduction in anime, in a theatrical version of anime, which are becoming very popular and making a lot of money right now, and in the US too. If you look at like Demon Slayer was like the #1 movie of 2020, even, like with restricted box office and stuff, but it was a very, very high grossing movie. Same, Demon Slayer, I think is the title of it, but
Yeah,
Dragon Ball Super Broly,
they do really well.
Yeah, so like it's becoming more and more popular, and it should be a way that a lot of these video games, especially Japanese founded video games, should be adapted at least first. Get that story out, get an adaptation that Hollywood can look at and be like, oh, that's what this should be, not us taking it and going from there and putting it straight to a big budget movie.
All right, I cut you off in the middle there. Joe is not paying attention to the time, but now you've got 2 minutes. Give us some defense for yourself and some attacks on Bobby's.
All right, so the main 2 things I feel like people say against mine are like the big budget level and Alex Garland directing, and I'll start with Alex Garland directing. I feel like the main reason I picked him is I know he officially didn't direct Dredd, but he basically ghost directed that. I kind of wanted like the look and the action of Dredd, and also with Ridley being this dragon pirate as the main villain, I wanted it to have like a cool, unique, good look, and I was thinking what he did with the mutant bear and Annihilation. He could take something that looks so weird and bizarre as that and still like include it in this world and make it believable. So I thought he could do the same thing with Ridley, and that's kind of why I wanted to do with that. And as far as my story, it's like about, it's a movie where basically this woman and a group of bounty hunters go up against some pirates to ultimately stop, this dragon and stop them from getting the Metroids. I feel like Alex Garland has a lot of room to put his own stamp and thoughts in there, and I don't think that necessarily has to be a big budget. You can look at something like The Mandalorian, which has a lot, a similar kind of aspect to that and plot as that, and it's, relatively small budget with makeup effects, and, the suit that he wears is relatively a similar look to Samus's power suit, and I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be like the big budget like Bobby says it is. I feel like it could be a relatively like mid-level budget, $60 million movie. And I like Bobby can talk like his movies do well for anime movies in America, but I feel like I'm relatively like pop culturally attuned, and I had no idea there was like this Dragon Ball Z animated movie or the Demon Slayer movie or whatever he was talking about. It's just like never popped up on my radar at all, and that's what I have to defend myself and attack his.
All right. That's just some good arguments on both sides. I'm definitely leaning one direction here. Since Johnny's making the final call, I'm just going to give my thoughts out front. I think Alex Garland as a director pick was really promising and interesting, and then as Joe was going through his pitch, I just became less and less interested. I just think it doesn't feel like something that would grab my attention as an Alex Garland fan. Like his name's on it, so I'm going to go see it, but it's not a premise where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what he do with that. I would love to see a Metroid movie from Alex Garland, but I just think Joe's movie sounds a bit too straightforward, a bit less on the like ambiguous sci-fi thinker kind of side, and misses a lot of the potential that I think is in the Metroid premise with Garland attached to it. And I think Bobby, the anime stuff, like I do think it's having a big kind of growth in the U.S. I think anime is becoming more and more popular as streaming becomes popular, and people are watching stuff like Attack on Titan, and anime is becoming a huge thing in the United States. And Dragon Ball did make a lot of money, and Demon Slayer made tons of money last year. So I think there's like a niche that Bobby's movie could really fit into and be a big hit. And I think the brand recognition of Metroid can get over anyone who's kind of turned off by the premise. Like, if you're willing to watch an animated movie, you at least know of Samus and Metroid. So you're like, I'm willing to get like the story of what that game is and give it a shot. So I'm leaning towards Bobby here by a pretty big amount here.
I just do want to say, because it's crazy, $455 million for Demon Slayer, highest grossing.
That's
of
crazy.
2020.
I had literally never heard of that movie until
Same.
Bobby said it
Same.
out loud. Yeah, none of that's really on my radar, like Joe said, but I agree at the end of the day with Tristan. He said mostly what needs to be said. Alex Garland, I think, would be an amazing choice to do a live action Metroid if they went that way. I would like a Sonoya Mizuno to be in the lead role, but Joe, I liked his casting too, especially as someone who has the look of what I think a studio would actually do with the character based on what is popular in the games and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, yeah, Joe went more towards Dread, and I think he should have went more towards Alex Garland's stronger work and went more with like different realities and parallel universes, because all of that is in the Metroid games with like Dark Samus and stuff. That could have really been something interesting. You could have made a cool sci-fi movie with actual like scientific themes as well as like aliens and stuff like that. And Bobby, maybe I'll never see his movie if it actually came out, but I do think that's a good direction to go for some video game movies. I think some are meant to be animated, and while I'd always be more interested in the live action adaptation to see what they can do with it, I think the doors might open more for Bobby's type of movies in the future with him saying how successful some of these have been. So I do think there's an audience, and I know a lot of people I work with talk about Attack on Titan, and I've never checked it out, but I know there's an audience for it. So I'm going to go with Bobby as well, just because I feel like Joe missed the plot that he could have strongly gotten behind. And I think Bobby just overall told a story more actual fans of the franchise would want to see. So that is what I'm going to go with.
All right, I'm not that upset about it. I didn't know anything about Metroid other than the fact that it existed until about Friday when I started like research.
I knew too much about it and almost put too many details in, but I liked my stuff.
Okay, it was to the point that I was thinking it was a fully made up thing, and because I've never been a big like game person, and I was thinking it was fully made up and not based on anything until about 10 minutes before we were playing Jackbox last Monday, and Tristan and Bobby started talking about Metroid. I'm like, oh, I guess I like remembered that's a thing. So wasn't super confident going into that pitch.
Understand?
I'm on the board.
I do like your director choice though, and I think you did a good job finding someone who kind of looked like the character, not knowing much about it.
So
she would be a good actress to kind of get out on the map.
My intention was not finding someone that looked like the video game character. My intention was I wanted like someone who could do fights. So I just did typed in actresses who do their own stunts, expecting I'd find like lesser known people, and she was like the one that always popped up, and then she just happened to look like Samus. So I was like, perfect.
Yeah, I like the casting choice. I like the director. I think if you knew a little bit more about it, you probably could have put something more interesting together. But yeah, that was a good win for Bobby. He needed that not to go down 3-0. So Joe, for the first time tonight, you will be choosing the next movie.
I am going to decide to stick in the realm of video games, and I am going to choose Crash Bandicoot the movie, and I will go first.
All right, I love it. Joe, after saying he's not a big video game guy, going directly to Crash Bandicoot.
Well, I picked the game I actually did play as a kid, so...
I'm excited for this one. There's a ton of huge cameos in this original movie, so I'm curious if they put a cameo or two in their movie.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so Crash Bandicoot, the movie, came out in 1998. It's directed by Steve Barron. It got a 22% Rotten Tomatoes. And the description is, in an attempt to crash in on the popularity of their growing Crash Bandicoot video game franchise and inspire interest in their new home video format, the DVD, Sony produced one of the first straight-to-DVD movies with Crash Bandicoot, the movie. Crash is sent on a globe-trotting adventure to defeat Dr. Neocortex in order to rescue his true love, Coco. A high-energy performance from Gary Busey couldn't stop the extreme low-budget, strange deviations from the source material and the failure to launch of DVD players from causing Crash Bandicoot, the movie, to quickly run out of lives. See what you did there. All right. So, Joe, who's going first?
I'm going first.
All right. Let's hear your take on Crash Bandicoot, the movie.
All right, so my director is Don Bluth, who is known for directing The Secret of Nim, Fievel, An American Tale, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and Land Before Time, because the rule I'm using is I am making this an 80s movie, specifically 1984, and retroactively making the video games based on my movie rather than having my movie based on the video games. So, so Secret of Nim came out in 82, An American Tale came out in 86, and he didn't have anything in between, so I just said this movie would be made in 84. So for the role of Crash Bandicoot, character doesn't really talk a whole lot in the game, so I just went with Kurt Russell. It was a few years after his voice role in The Fox and the Hound, and I thought he would fit that role. For his love interest, Tawna, I went with Charlene Tilton, who was on the show Dallas at the time. For Dr. Neo Cortex, I went with Leonard Nimoy. For the voice of Aku Aku, I went with Robert Guillaume, who would later go on to voice Rafiki. For Dr. Nitrous Brio, I went with Dwight Schultz, who played Mad Dog Murdoch on the TV show The A-Team. For the role of Ripper Roo, I went with Dom DeLuise, and for Koala Kong, I went with Frank Welker, both of whom are kind of Don Bluth staples. So, for my movie, in a secluded archipelago, Dr. Neo Cortex, a mad scientist, uses his Evolvo Ray to genetically alter the local wildlife into an army of soldiers for the purpose of world domination. Among them is a bandicoot named Crash, who Cortex wants to be the leader of his army. Crash is rejected by the Cortex Vortex, a machine intended to brainwash him, and is cast by Cortex to the ocean below his castle. As Cortex prepares Tawna, Crash's girlfriend, to be used in Crash's place, Crash washes up on a smaller island. Crash realizes he has to save Tawna and defeat Cortex. Throughout his journey, he is aided by Aku Aku, a spirit guide. On his way back to Cortex, Crash defeats Ripper Roo and Koala Kong. When he reaches Cortex's stronghold, he faces Cortex's assistant, Dr. Nitrous Brio, who battles Crash by ingesting a potion to transform himself into a giant green monster. Crash rescues Tawna and puts her on Cortex's airship. He arranges TNT throughout the castle and ignites it. Crash escapes to Cortex's airship while Cortex boards a hovercraft and attacks Crash with a plasma gun as his castle burns behind them. The two shoot each other until Dr. Neo Cortex falls from the sky. Tawna embraces Crash as the two ride Cortex's airship into the sunset. And that is my pitch. I felt it kind of went with a lot of Don Bluth stuff of like animals going against humans and mind control, especially with like Secret of Nim being his previous movies, and you know Gabriel's horn in All Dogs Go to Heaven. So I thought it was the perfect fit, and that is my pitch.
Joe said a lot of animated movies I've never cared to watch. Bobby, let's hear your pitch.
I went in a very different direction. To start out, my directors, we've used them a million times, I believe, it seems like, but I couldn't find anyone better after I wrote my pitch than to use Lord and Miller. So they are going to be my directors. As for my rule, you'll get it from my cast. My Crash is going to be voiced by Danny DeVito. My Dr. Neo Cortex is going to be voiced by Charlie Day. My Coco Bandicoot, Crash's younger sister, not love interest, which was in the original movie apparently, is going to be voiced by Caitlin Olsen. Aku Aku is going to be voiced by Glenn Howerton. And Uka Uka, the evil version of Aku Aku, is going to be voiced by Rob McElhenney. So I'm using the cast of a sitcom, and that is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I gave more, unlike my Metroid pitch, I'm giving more of a synopsis with kind of a tone rather than an entire, description of the plot. But Crash thinks that he had finally defeated Dr. Cortex and has retired to Philadelphia. Bored in his new life without an enemy, he is a lazy drunk who's out of shape. When Dr. Cortex mysteriously returns with a plan to turn every big city in the U.S. into a jungle, Crash must face his old rival with a bit of rust this time. It's a self-aware movie about a real-life, washed-up video game mascot because Crash Bandicoot is basically dead. They keep remaking like the old ones essentially, but it's not really doing anything anymore. About literally being washed up and trying to get back into it. So it's comedy about these old platformers that kind of faded because like the whole video game mascot thing has kind of died down other than Mario. And that's pretty much the only one that actually makes money now. Even Sonic doesn't. But so you get him as Danny DeVito. It's going to be a fat, beer-bellied Crash Bandicoot with Danny DeVito as the voice, trying to jump on these boxes like they did in the old games, trying to get to the crazy Neo Cortex voiced by Charlie Day. kind of a commentary on like some video games, but also like someone going through a midlife crisis, because Lord and Miller throw like some themes that are can a little bit more serious into a ridiculous comedy. They kind of do that sometimes, so that's what I'm going for. It's going to be more of a definitely a more comedic take on the character.
All right. Interesting. I honestly don't have a ton of connection to the franchise of Crash Bandicoot outside of wearing like Crash Bandicoot gear in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I've never really played the games. So I'm glad I'm not making the final decision. That will be Tristan. Tristan, knowing more about the franchise, do you have any questions for them?
Surprisingly, I don't have a ton of questions. I think they both went for different takes, but I think I got a good idea of each of them. I'm shocked by the direction Bobby went, but I think it'll be fun to hear him argue that one. So I'm curious to just get to the arguments on this one. I'd love to hear as they're talking just a bit about like the Crash world, any Crash characters they brought in, anything like that they didn't get to mention in their pitch. But yeah, I just love the Crash world and the characters, so I'm excited to hear them argue about it.
All right. My one question for Bobby is, you put this movie out. I'd go check it out because it has the cast of It's Always Sunny in it, but I don't know much about the franchise. Lord and Miller do a lot of good meta humor and a lot of stuff that kind of is funny if you know the characters. Will I get your movie's humor if I don't know anything about Crash Bandicoot?
Yes, because the meta-ness of this is more of a overall video game humor. So it's going to be the weird awkwardness you run into in platformers when something is weird, or like a jump is weird or something and you can't quite make it like that. It's more leaning into platforming, like video game meta humor, rather than straight up Crash Bandicoot. If you do know the characters, there's going to be those moments because they have to throw them in there, but it's not going to be enough to throw the general audience off.
Got it. So more like the Lego movie rather than like Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, that being said, so Joe gave his pitch first, so he'll get 1 minute on the clock to kind of address things.
All right, so yeah, my main thing is I feel like it's another one that's like sounds like a great SNL sketch, sounds like a good like 20-minute video, but I just feel like for an hour-long thing, watching like Crash Bandicoot be fat and struggle is just like, I don't know if Crash Bandicoot fans want that. I don't know if old platform fans is like that's what they're going to see. Oh, like I've been a Crash Bandicoot fan my whole life. I finally get a Crash Bandicoot movie, and he's old and fat and voiced by Danny DeVito and can't really do anything anymore, and I just don't know if like that's what's gonna get people out. I feel like Crash Bandicoot fans are gonna be excited about it, and if you weren't, or like just like people that played those video games in the early 2000s, and if you didn't play those video games in the early 2000s, I feel like the meta-ness and like all the inside jokes just aren't gonna, cater to you and be interested to you. Where like the Lego movie is different. Like everybody played Legos. Like everybody knows Legos, and especially like the characters like Batman and Gandalf are so like iconic and just so much part of pop culture. And I just don't know if the platform characters really were in that way.
All right, Bobby, you got a minute to respond to that. I definitely want to hear your take on that because I'm curious how you're gonna defend making such a not Crash game out of this.
Yeah, so basically, look, Crash Bandicoot, the fans of it are gonna want a straight up adaptation, but there's hardly any story in these games. It's a platformer where he's jumping on boxes with like no talking and gets to this evil doctor. So to introduce something to where the heart of the movie, because Lord and Miller like to throw heart into their stories, especially like Lego Movie, is Aku Aku motivating Crash to get back to do something, to have a purpose, because he felt like he lost his purpose after his one thing that he focused his whole life on seemed like it was gone. And so there's your heart throughout the movie with Crash. So you do get actually like a good character with Crash Bandicoot. It's not just all humor. It's funny to see him do this. And there's going to be a lot of humor with video games thrown in there. And you do get characters like I didn't mention there. Crunch Bandicoot is going to be like the main henchman in there and like stuff like that. So there's going to be stuff from the game. There's going to be, all right, to get to Joe's, I just think it sounds like Johnny said, like a lot of animated movies never fair to watch. I think that's kind of what Joe is making this movie. Because there's like I said, there's like no plot. I don't know what the heart of his to actually stay true to the game and like have it. What is the story? What other than just animals fighting an evil doctor. Secret of Nim had a lot more to it. I didn't get that out of yours. It was very dark too. This is like a happy, character that kind of just jumps around that doesn't even speak, hardly ever does, and like takes out an evil doctor. It's like very, very generic. So I wanted to throw something a lot more interesting into that story.
All right. Let's swap over. Joe, you got 2 minutes. Give some defense and then some attack on Bobby's.
All right, so I feel like a lot of the, like I was saying at the end of my pitch, like you railed on me for Alex Garland for Metroid. I feel like Don Bluth does fit a lot of like the kind of themes and the things that eventually that do happen in Crash Bandicoot, with like the whole mind control aspect, and with like the testing on animals, and you can have more themes like these soldiers and maybe doing what's right versus what you're told to do. And then I feel like also part of the reason I made this a like movie that the video games are later based on is we see like times before where they'll take a video game based on a franchise and like maybe change the tone or do something different with it. And I feel like since I'm retroactively making this movie come first, whether they change the video game or whether the video game has a different tone or not doesn't really matter because my movie comes out first. But I feel like the story wise and all that, I could see where they get the original Crash video game from my movie. And then as far as Bobby's, I just don't know. Like, I still haven't quite figured out like who his movie is for. Like, I just don't understand it. And then as far as back to mine of like movies people don't see, like Secret of Nim, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and American Tail, like all those movies are super positively received. Like, they have great reviews. I never see anyone like really give a negative review. The people that seen them love them, and I feel like my Crash Bandicoot movie perfectly fits in there with this soldier fighting against his orders, having to go against the evil doctor to rescue his girlfriend. I feel like has fits that Don Bluth kind of movie and story, and that's all I have to attack and defend.
All right. I'm making a final call on this Crash Bandicoot movie. If you couldn't tell, I'm a bit attached comparatively to Johnny, but do you got any questions for him, Johnny? Any last second thoughts? And if we go to the what could be the final call of the match here?
No, because we still have. If I win, I'd still have to win one more. It's 2-1.
Oh, that's true. I was keeping track wrong. We're good. Not that close yet.
Honestly, when Bobby said he was going a different direction and he picked a pair of directors that we've used before, I thought he was about to say Neville Dean and Taylor, and it would have been a much more different type of film. I think Lord Miller's kind of a chalk pick, especially if you're going for the type of humor and stuff Bobby is, but I think it's chalk for a reason. They make those movies well. It's tough because not being really connected to the franchise of the games and not being connected to any like Secret of Nim or any of that, it's a tough call in terms of what would interest me. But personally, like not knowing much about it, if they made Bobby's movie, I think I could go watch it and enjoy it and get the humor. Because like he said, like not making the jumps and him being kind of fat and falling short like that, you don't need to have played Crash Bandicoot to get that video game reference. I think you could replace Bobby's movie with Donkey Kong or a million other gaming franchises that maybe don't have great stories, but they haven't been able to track recently. And I think that's a cool kind of meta humor of like kind of failed video game franchises or stuff they couldn't really bring back and get on board with. So I think Bobby's humor will have enough for me, and I personally wouldn't go check out Joe's movie. It was made in the 80s. It was before I was born. I don't care to go see movies in that style, I guess. It's not exactly my type. If it was like a Studio Ghibli type of thing, I'd probably be more interested in it, but I don't really care about Joe's director or any of his work, honestly. So I'm going to go Bobby just based on my personal interest, but I'm interested to hear what Tristan has to say because I think he's more interested in those animated movies and in the franchise, so it could be completely opposite of what I say.
Yeah, I'm split on both of these pitches. I think Joe gave a good version of the movie he was trying to.
Did Bobby get his 2 minutes?
I was just kind of thinking that.
I don't think Bobby ever got his 2 minutes.
Bobby got his 2 minutes. Bobby didn't get his 1 minute. I think Tristan Joe got 1 minute. Bobby got 2 minutes. Joe got 2 minutes, and then we just made the call. But I don't think we needed to hear anything else personally.
Right. Yeah. If you're leaning to Joe, then I feel like I could make some defenses, but I mean, if you can, if you just want to call it.
Yeah,
like...
I was gonna say it. I feel like we can just call it there.
All right.
I would give Bobby the 2 minutes to defend himself, but he's already gonna win it for me here. I think I saw the direction Joe was going for, but it didn't necessarily click for me personally. And I think the potential of the Lord and Miller parody take on Crash Bandicoot, I think, is pretty great. It also has the potential to go really badly, like the fat Dan DeVito falling on himself could be something that's like really not funny. But I think Lord and Miller are the directors who can make that work, and you're not giving it to the directors of like Paul Blart Mall Cop or something. You're giving it to directors who can pull off that kind of humor, and like you said, pull off a mix between specific Crash humor and also just like general video game humor. And as we're getting to the era of video game movies starting to take over a little bit, I think it's a good, like almost Deadpool level kind of take on the genre. So I'm going for Bobby on that.
All right.
My mind's been scared on these timers this round. We'll be back onto it next round.
Yeah, I'll try to keep track too, like at least to like.
I was like,
because I thought that same thing. I'm like, wait, Joe started and Joe finished.
I was like trying to figure out if he accidentally didn't give you your 2 minutes, or he was voting for you anyway, so it didn't matter. And I was just like,
yeah.
It was, I kind of noticed that, but I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. But yeah, basically, we're getting used to the format. You know, this is why we're doing some forgotten movies, kind of, working out the kinks. But, all right, so that means we have a tie game, 2-2, and Joe gets to pick the next movie.
All right, I'm going to go with The Bone Wars, and I'll let Bobby go first, I guess.
Okay.
Sorry, for a second. What movie did you say?
Bone Wars.
Yeah, I've been waiting to get to the Bone Wars. All right. Anyway, so the Bone Wars came out in 1993. It got a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by Warren Beatty. I won't pull an anchor man here with Tristan editing some things. The story of the rivalry in discovering dinosaur bones between the wealthy but arrogant Othniel Charles March, played by Marlon Brando, and the former child prodigy Edward Drinker Cope, played by Jeff Bridges. Despite having two legendary actors, the movie bombed coming out the weekend after Jurassic Park. And a movie with real dinosaurs kind of took the attention away from the movie about the real-life paleontologists in the 1800s. So I'm interested to hear what direction you guys went with it. And this is a story that I'm super interested in, so I want it to be two great pitches. And I think Joe said he's going first?
No, Bobby's going to go first.
Bobby's going first. All right, Bobby, what do you got for the Bone Wars?
First off, did Tristan type La La Land in there? Is that where you messed up with Warren Beatty?
No, he typed Johnny Sucks after the directed by Warren Beatty. So
all right. So the fact that you're actually very interested in the story might kill me, but that's okay because I like my movie.
It will.
So, the Bone Wars. My director is going to be Taika Waititi, and my rule is that I'm going to be putting an actor on the map, and that is going to be Harvey Guillen, who is Guillermo de la Cruz in What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show. Hasn't done a lot other than like some TV work, but I think he's really funny and really good in that role. My other paleontologist in the movie is going to be someone that Taika has worked with on Green Lantern, and then also in the upcoming Free Guy, and that is Ryan Reynolds. So I have Harvey Guillen and Ryan Reynolds, my two leads. And then I have Taika Waititi, who's doing a lot of voices, and I will get into that in my pitch.
Oh, no.
All right. So, right. All right, let's get to it. My rival paleontologist, played by Harvey Guillen and Ryan Reynolds, are on the hunt for dinosaur bones back around when the original was taking place. On a trip to Texas near the Mexican border, the rivals meet and simultaneously discover a massive dinosaur fossil. What was odd is that the bones were glowing an odd color. After a flash of light, neither are sure what happened and go back to fighting about whose discovery the bones actually were. Suddenly, the bones start to move and warp, and a skeleton dinosaur walks towards them. So, yeah, skeleton dinosaur comes to life, speaking as if it just woke up from a long nap, voiced by Taika Waititi. This leads to the Bone Wars between the two rival paleontologists. Both getting... So they basically have now somehow gotten the powers from these bones to resurrect fossils into living skeletons. This leads to the bone wars between them, which with Ryan Reynolds kind of instantly, he's kind of the more unlikable one that is like the greedier, like right away, oh, I'm like the bad guy kind of deal. Harvey Guillen's character is more like he's the sympathetic guy who doesn't know what to do, but he has to keep up and slowly gets greedier and greedier kind of as it goes. You kind of see him making a little bit of a turn. And from there, it's more of it's a wild comedy with skeleton dinosaurs, all of them voiced by Taika Waititi, like I said. So they all have the same voice, no matter what dinosaur it is, no matter what size, no matter what it looks like. They each recruit a team and have allies on each sides, and they ride the skeletons, flying them, etc. in a wild action comedy. In the end, Guillen, Harvey's character, realizes his greed and power has turned him into something that he never wanted to be. He gives a very heartfelt, long speech to Ryan Reynolds' character saying they shouldn't use their powers, and you think it's going to, like, Ryan Reynolds isn't going to listen and do anything. He looks at him and goes, yeah, sure, makes sense to me. And that whole huge, like, heartfelt speech kind of worked, and you get that weird Taika humor twist where it's like, oh, and that's it. And so they decide not to use their powers anymore and walk off because that's too much power for any human. So, yeah, I made mine a literal bone wars between skeleton dinosaurs because I don't really care about the paleontologist aspect as much, because we've gotten stories like Jurassic Park and a lot of things that have explored paleontologist stuff in a different way. And I think this, if you put it out now with a straight up story of them, would not come across as a very interesting story to put to screen. Now that we actually have them in museums. Yeah, literal bone wars. Johnny is muted, but and I feel like he is disparaging everything that I just said.
I am. First of all, there's no such thing as flying dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are land walking animals.
What about a pterodactyl?
You know what a
pterodactyl is a petrosaur.
People classify them as dinosaurs. So it's everything from the era. Everything from the era.
I understand. I just want to correct the statement flying dinosaurs, which is not true. Doesn't exist. And
the new Jurassic Park is pretty cool. I saw the trailer during the IMAX screening of Fast and Furious. That's all I had to say.
Everything about that sentence made me angry. All right, Joe. I hope you stuck in reality a little more than Bobby did. I'm going to be honest. Let's hear it.
All right. So, first of all, I'll tell you my director, and that should probably tell you more of the direction I went. My director is James Mangold, and the rule I use is to turn one into a miniseries. So
perfect.
My Othniel March is going to be played by Hugh Jackman, who worked with Mangold on Logan and the Wolverine. My Edward Cope is going to be played by Ben Foster, who worked with him on 3:10 to Yuma. And then the character of Joseph, I don't really know how to say his last name, but Leidy or something like that, is going to be played by Richard E. Grant, who worked with Mangold on Logan as well. So I decided for my role to make this a miniseries. It's an interesting story that spans over 15 years, and I picture it as kind of like a 6-episode, hour-a-piece series on like HBO or something like that. So my first episode is about their early years and seeing how they grew up. Othniel March grew up poor, and Edward Cope was a rich Quaker. We also see that March was calm, while Cope had a quick temper. The two meet in the mid-1860s in Berlin, with Edward even staying with March. The two work together when they return to America, even naming species they find after each other. Episode 1 ends with March paying the landowner of one of their digs that any fossils his men find be sent to him and not Cope. Episode 2 focuses on Cope's reconstruction of the plesiosaur. After his reconstruction, Cope submits his findings to the American Philosophical Society. Then March sees it and realizes Cope put the head on the wrong end and put it at the end of the tail. Neither one admits they are wrong, so they bring in paleontologist Joseph Leidy to determine the answer, and Leidy says Cope is wrong. Cope tries to buy back all of his papers, but Leidy exposes Cope's cover-up at the next American Philosophical Society meeting, which is the official end of March and Cope's friendship. My next few episodes follow their rivalry as they pay people off to get bones sent to them and not the other, as they spy on each other and try to one-up the other. The two are rushing to classify their species as fast as possible, with both knowingly classifying the same species as different things. There would even be a scene of March slipping away from his camp and returning with a cartload of fossils, narrowly escaping a tribe of Native Americans. In the Coma Bluff digs, the two even resort to destroying smaller fossils so they don't end up in the other's hands. They also fill in their dig sites with dirt and rock. The final episodes take place after the digs when the two have run out of money. Cope, who had kept a journal over the last 15 years, wrote down all of the mistakes and misdeeds March had done against science. He gives the journal to a newspaper friend. The two fight in the papers for years. March, who lived extravagantly, is losing money while Cope is becoming more popular in the scientific community. Cope is elected president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science the same year that March steps down as the head of the Academy of Sciences. The final episode goes until the end of their rivalry, which lasted until Cope's death in 1897. By that time, both men were broke. Cope is sick and sells part of his fossil collection and rents out one of his houses to make ends meet. Marsh mortgages his house and asks Yale for a salary so he can live. Cope, wanting to prove one last time he was better than March, asks for his skull to be donated to science and have his brain measured to prove it was bigger than March's, but March never offers his brain to science. Basically, my miniseries follows the rivalry of two men who basically risk everything they have just to prove that they're better than the other, with dinosaur digs and fossils and everything in the background. And that is my pitch.
Two different directions. Johnny, how you feeling right now? How much arguing do we need?
So here's the thing, John.
I'm gonna be honest.
Just if you like the original story, because that sounded incredibly boring to me, you're gonna pick Joe. So go for it. That's fine.
Here's my thing. When I wanted to do this movie, I thought the direction you could really go with this and make it interesting is maybe not as exciting on paper as it would be on screen. Like if you read someone the prestige of two rival magicians giving everything they can in the hopes of just topping the other one. That is the basis of this story, and that's what I think Joe really nailed. And I think that would make for a really exciting miniseries about something that most people could find boring. I think he picked the best possible director to do it, good cast, and it tells the real story. And Bobby's is
nonsense.
I don't know what Bobby's is. Bobby's is
it's
just
fun.
Dinosaur bones running around, and I don't like that choice for Taika Waititi. I would have liked it better if you just stuck with that and maybe had Nic Cage in yours and just went full ridiculous. I don't like that. Maybe Taika wasting his time doing Bobby's movie. So
that's fine.
I'd go with Joe because that's more of what I was looking for sure with this choice. So good work, Joe.
Thank you.
Bobby, try again.
I said before, you were not on the stream yet, but I said we were talking vaguely about these movies, and I'm like, there's one or maybe two that if they are very interested in the original story, I'm not even going to be able to fight. So
I think what helped you with Metroid and honestly Crash Bandicoot, different for different reasons, kind of hurt you in this one. But yeah, I think this could be a really cool mini series. And when we did that rule, when I was looking over these, I was like, oh, this one would be a really, really cool mini series on like a streaming service. And interest people. So, and Joe went full dad movie with it. So I respect.
Well, the one thing giant fighting dinosaurs and one didn't. So I feel like the one with the giant dinosaurs is probably the one that I'd go for. But
well, like my thing with it,
I also didn't know who picked this and thought that again, it's like
My thing was like I just wanted to capture kind of the dynamic between Matt Damon's character and Christian Bale's character in Ford versus Ferrari. That was kind of my choice for why I picked
it's the same thing.
Yours sounds very good. I just
like Ford v Ferrari, Rush, the Prestige. That's kind of the story of real life of these two in terms of just like rivals that between them discovered over like 120 different dinosaurs and were the two like biggest paleontologists, and I think that's a cool story. So
check out the original movie.
Watch the original movie.
So to try to stay alive here, I'm going to go with my shortest pitch, but the one that I really love the tone and kind of style that I'm putting into it. So I'm going to go with Cryptid Hunters.
Okay. That's where I would have went, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Cryptid Hunters was directed by Nic Cage in 2013 and somehow had a positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes at 67%. That's probably a rare feat for the director. Adapted from the book of the same name, Cryptid Hunters follows teen siblings Grace, played by Shailene Woodley, and Marty O'Hara, played by Lucas Hedges, who are sent to live with their eccentric Uncle Wolf, an anthropologist living on a remote island secretly populated by cryptids. various creatures thought to be fictional or extinct, possibly dinosaur bone people walking around. Compete with ancient rivalries, or to complete with ancient rivalries, secret lab bases, and giant monsters. Cryptid Hunters is somewhat notable for later career of its stars, but bombed on release thanks to laughable effects and the decision to up the teen dystopian drama in reshoots in response to the Hunger Games. So Shailene Woodley unfortunately has a career of failing at teen. What is this like?
Dystopian future.
Divergent.
Yeah,
They're Divergent teen book.
Yeah.
Young adult novels,
adult
YA novels, movies. Yeah, she's not have a great career of that, but she excels in everything else she does. So hopefully they don't put her in the next Percy Jackson movie. All right. So that being said, that was the only one I could think of. I was trying to think of the other one, Artemis Fowl. There you go. Who is going first?
I'll go first. It's short.
All right,
so
Bobby.
Short
but sweet.
Yep.
Hopefully.
So I really did the premise when I saw it because I was not familiar with this movie, and I saw the premise. I'm like, that actually sounds really interesting. I don't really want to change up too much about that, but I really want to give it a better tone, a better visual style, a better flair. And I think there's no better way to do that than to make this a 1980s movie, specifically 1987, and be directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz, reteaming from The Dark Crystal. So we're going to get a lot of puppet work in this movie, and I think that gives the creatures a very good kind of look for what I'm going for. My Marty is going to be played by River Phoenix, who was 17 years old at the time after Stand By Me. My Grace is going to be played by Mia Sara, who was Sloane from Ferris Bueller's Day Off 1 year after that movie. And Uncle Wolf, the crazy uncle, is going to be played by Gary Busey because he was still with it at the time, but still could give a crazy kind of eccentric performance. So I think that he is kind of a perfect crazy uncle kind of character at that time. But like I said, I'm going to keep the plot generally the same. It's these two teens that go visit their crazy uncle on an island. They reduce the teen dystopian drama stuff, and it's more of a adventure fantasy movie of them trying to figure out why these creatures exist on this island, kind of, and it's more of an adventure with their uncle of them trying to traverse everything and kind of get him out of there. And it's a lot of puppetry and atmosphere, everything that Jim Henson and Frank Oz do best with a lot of the creatures, and that's what I'm going for.
All right. Not a ton of plot there, but I like the direction that you've gone. Joe, what do you got for
All right, so
Cryptid Hunters?
I went in a very different direction than the original and a very, very different direction than whatever direction Bobby went in. So for my rule is where my director comes into play because my director is Paul Thomas Anderson. And might not sound like the best move, but it'll make sense when I give my pitch, I think, hopefully.
Will it, Joe?
My Dr. Travis Wolf is Joaquin Phoenix. The role of Ted Bronson, who was in the original book but didn't make it into the movie, is going to be played by Jude Law. The role of Noah Blackwood will be played by Jeff Bridges. Grace O'Hara will be played by McKenna Grace, and Marty O'Hara will be played by Jacob Tremblay. So the book was a kid's book and obviously told from the kid's perspective. And to make it more of a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, I will tell it from Joaquin Phoenix's character, Dr. Travis Wolf's perspective. And a lot of it in his movies, he explores, like, it's character studies of people in different fields. Like, Boogie Nights is, like, the porn industry, and then you have Punch Drunk Love is, like, this guy that sells, like, toilet stuff. And then you have the one where he's a tailor. That shitty movie that I didn't care for.
Phantom Thread.
Phantom Thread, there we go. Thread. And so basically I wanted like this character study of this guy that would go and hunt these fictional monsters like the Chupacabra and Sasquatch and maybe any dinosaurs that are still alive. So I thought that could be kind of an interesting, darker dynamic for Paul Thomas Anderson. For a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. So my movie is about Dr. Travis Wolf, a mysterious hermit living off on his own in the middle of the jungle. He only has one friend, his childhood best friend, Ted Bronson. One day, Wolf gets a letter saying his sister and brother-in-law have died and his niece and nephew are coming to live with him. Wolf is not happy because but because he loves his sister, he is willing to take them in. Wolf makes the kids aware he has no need for family, and he is only doing this out of obligation. He tells the kids about cryptids, mysterious animals thought to be fictional or extinct, and the kids think he's crazy, but begin to bond with their uncle, and he begins to bond with them. With reports of a dinosaur cryptid in the area that Wolf has been looking for his whole life, he decides to take the kids along. While on the hunt, they meet Noah Blackwood, Wolf's longtime rival. Noah takes a liking to the kids, especially Grace, saying she looks just like his daughter. Noah is a lot warmer than Wolf, and Wolf tells the kids he may seem nice, but to be wary of him. After a run-in with a dinosaur cryptid, the group gets separated. The kids end up with Noah Blackwood, and Wolf is alone. Wolf, needing help, visits his friend Ted. This is where it's revealed that Grace isn't Wolf's niece, but his daughter. You see, many years ago, Wolf fell in love with Rose Blackwood, Noah's daughter. She got pregnant, but when Rose died in childbirth, Wolf knew he wasn't the father material and gave his child, Grace, to his sister to raise as his own. It's also revealed that Noah has sexually abused Rose, his own daughter, her whole childhood. And so my movie is overall about Wolf going out to rescue his daughter and nephew in the jungle and ending with the showdown between Wolf and Noah, where the kids ultimately get away. Noah's died, but Wolf's fate is left a mystery. And that is my pitch.
All right. Well, Tristan's going to be making the final call here, and he knows a little more about the source material than I do. Do you have any questions for them?
I don't have a ton of questions. I once got punched in the face over this book because I got in an argument with someone when I was in like 6th grade, and they were very passionate, I guess, about the character they liked more than my character. So they punched me in the face, and I was like, "Oh, I guess we're getting a fight over this Cryptid Hunters book that no one has read apparently except for us."
That no one's heard about except you.
Yeah, I have some interesting memories with this. It was one of those kind of like formative, kind of fun, schlocky books that I read when I was a kid, and I think Bobby's definitely leans more towards like the original idea of what the book is, and whereas Joe's is a bit more of a different take. But I'm liking both pitches. I want to hear them argue through what they've got.
All right. I guess my one question, because I can picture Bobby's movie. He told me about the puppets, and you have Henson and Oz and stuff. So I get that. Joe, does your movie have creatures? And if Paul Thomas Anderson is directing it, how would those creatures look visually?
So mine is more because like the main one in the book is this dinosaur they're hunting, so it is like this giant lizard and like relatively like human, I would say like human size, that's maybe like this raptor or something that never actually went extinct, and you get like a quick look at it. But mine is more like an examination of the type of people that would like go out and try to hunt these mysterious creatures rather than about the creatures themselves, because I feel like that's more of like a Paul Thomas Anderson type avenue that he would explore rather than like, oh, here's a movie with a bunch of creatures.
All right. Also, dinosaurs, not lizards. Anyway, let's go with we got one minute on the clock for Bobby, and then 1 minute to Joe, and then 2 minutes each. Let's remember that.
This time, guys.
Yeah.
We got it.
All right.
So, all right, Bobby, you got 1 minute.
Okay, you ready, Tristan?
I'm ready. 1 minute.
All right. So, Joe, what I have for you is I think that Paul Thomas Anderson, for a choice for a book like this, for a story like this, is not necessarily the best choice, in my opinion. I think that it does two things, I think, wrong. I think if it is Paul Thomas Anderson, then there is no creature. The guy is crazy and he's hunting them. You never show them, never acknowledge that they're real, but they're trying to connect with this person that is hunting them, instead of actually having the lizard or whatever creature that it is that they're fighting. But then because of that, you then lose a lot of the audience that for a movie called Cryptid Hunters that is based on something with creatures and stuff like, and big fantastical things, to make it a very grounded drama like that, I think loses a lot of that audience. So with mine, I think it captures all the imagination that can come with a story like this. I think visually with the puppets, with Jim Henson and Frank Oz, you get a much better picture of what it visually it's going to be like, and enthrall you into that world, into this island, into the universe.
5 more seconds, Bobby.
And I think that is a better take for this type of movie.
All right, Joe, you got about 1 minute.
All right, so number one, it's hard to attack Bobby's because it's basically all I know is it's a movie with puppets. So my thing is like as far as like the story, like I stuck to kind of the original story of the book. I just kind of flipped it and made it, you know, more adult by flipping the perspective. Where yours, I don't even know. Like you say, oh, people that see the title Cryptid Hunters are gonna, you know, be turned off. But like anyone that read Cryptid Hunters, they're like, what is this? Does this have anything to do with the book? I don't know, because I don't know what your movie is at all. I just know there's puppets in your movie, and that's kind of it. Jim Henson directed it, and that's really, it's hard to attack a movie that barely is a thing. And as far as what you said about mine, is I feel like a lot of those answers will be answered in the trailer, as far as like what the Cryptid Hunters thing and the, you know, dinosaur, is it real or not? The fact that it's like this large lizard, it's like, is this even an extinct creature, or is he just going crazy over a random lizard? Like, is this a dinosaur cryptid, or is it a lizard? Is our uncle crazy? I feel like that's definitely an aspect in my movie.
I'm gonna cut you off there, Joe. I'm gonna swap back over now to Bobby for his 2 minutes. Finally getting your 2 minutes there, Bobby. I
So-
want to hear a bit of the defense on what Joe just attacked you on not
Yep.
having much of a plot in your pitch. So just give us a little bit, as you're going, a bit of an idea of what the plot is of your movie a bit.
Yeah, I mean, basically what I said is the original plot of it I really did enjoy. They just kind of, like you said, so it's following more of the story of the book of these teens visiting the island and all that. It's keeping the general story of the original, which we do a lot, where you don't need to give a description by description thing of what happens. So similar plot to yours, but actually sticking in the vein of what the movie should be, as far as visually, as far as the creatures, as far as an enthralling visual movie where you get this fantasy island essentially with all these different creatures. You get to see different things like dinosaurs, like unicorns, like made-up creatures that Jim Henson and Frank Oz would be great at coming up with, like little gremlins, things that could be a little creepy and dark, like a lot of different creatures just thrown in that, because I think giving them the creativity to make any creature that you want that is a made-up fictional character on this island gives a lot of advantages for Jim Henson and Frank Oz visually and for storytelling. I think that River Phoenix is an amazing lead. It's, you know, obviously too bad that we lost him at a young age, but he would be a fantastic lead for the movie. Gary Busey gives a lot of very good performances and can be a little wacky and off and can be that kind of crazy uncle who's been on this island. And then Mia Sara is also, again, a very good actress and would draw people in after Ferris Bueller. People look back on her fondly, for sure, on her work in the 80s.
You got 30 seconds, Bobby.
Yeah, so I think more, Joe, I don't think Paul Thomas Anderson, for a movie called Cryptid Hunters, I just don't think it all fits together in my head of what this movie really is, and that it would actually be a Paul Thomas Anderson movie and something that he would be drawn to, versus something that would be a little bit more fantastical and adventurous, like the original story.
All right, we're swapping over to Joe. Joe, you got 2 minutes. I definitely want to hear your response to his thing about this not necessarily feeling like a Paul Thomas Anderson movie and being kind of a weird hybrid of these two things. So give us some defense on that, and then some attacks on Bobby's.
All right, so one thing is, in the original movie and in the book that it's based off of, there aren't really hardly any cryptids in this movie. There really is just like the one dinosaur they're looking after. So if you're saying it's following the book, following the original movie, and there's all these creatures, it's like, well, then you're not following the original movie and, you know, the original story. And I just feel like yours, especially with like all of these creatures, don't fit the story of the original with like the whole, oh, it turns out their uncle is the girl's dad, and that whole narrative, and then Noah Blackwood being, you know, her grandfather, and that whole dynamic. I don't know if that really fits. I don't know if I see Mia Sara and Gary Busey as father and daughter. I don't know if that fits. And then as far as the Paul Thomas Anderson, I feel like I've defended that with the aspect of it's, you know, my movie isn't really about the cryptids, because the cryptids don't really play into the book and the movie that much. It's more about the, you know, hunters. The movie's not called Cryptids. The book isn't called Cryptids. It's called Cryptid Hunters because that's who it focuses on. And I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson would do a good job of focusing on these like crazy ass people who go off looking for these mythological and potentially extinct creatures. I feel like he could show the family dynamic and that whole thing with this uncle having to take care of this girl that's revealed to be his daughter. And I think it could be interesting to see like Jeff Bridges. You see him initially in the movie and you think, oh, this is like this fun, kind-hearted guy. It'd be nice to see him with, you know, I wish the kids could go to him. And then it's revealed that he's actually like a super hardcore creeper. And
You got 30 seconds, Joe.
and to see Joaquin Phoenix have that turn where he has to go and rescue these kids that he didn't want and ultimately potentially die for it, I feel like could be a good Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and that's my pitch, or that's my defense.
All right. Any final thoughts or questions on it, Johnny, before I give my final call here?
I'll say this. I think when they first gave their pitches, I was like, this is, Bobby's game to lose. It seems like that is more the style of what the book and things feel like with the Jim Henson puppets and stuff. But I think Joe did a really good job defending his movie and arguing for it. And he almost won me over in the end, but I do think I side more towards my gut feeling initially with Bobby, because he did bring up some more points. I'm not familiar with the source material. I haven't seen the movie or read the books, but I think Bobby's just sounds like being more like the Dark Crystal would be something I think would be more fun. And while I kind of like the idea of Paul Thomas Anderson doing like maybe this hunter is kind of crazy, like, is this thing real or not? I think it has its base, but I don't necessarily think it fits if you're basing it off like a young adult novel. So I think at the end of the day, Bobby's would satisfy more audience. So I'm gonna go Bobby on that.
Yeah, I was feeling similarly at the beginning. I thought when Bobby first gave his pitch, and then John and Joe said his director choice, I was like, oh, that's a wild road pick. I feel like it's going to be Bobby's kind of runaway win here. As Joe was going, he definitely gave some good points, and I think he made it feel like a good Paul Thomas Anderson movie, but I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me, because I do think that in a weird way, Joe captured the book a little bit better in certain ways. Like, it's about like the people and necessarily the creatures, because there's not a ton of creatures in the book, but I almost feel like Bobby improved upon the book in that way. Like, he took the potential of the book, the potential of this island full of creatures, and really like lead into that. And I think Joe's, surprisingly, as he was going, became more and more and more like something that I would like to see. But I think Bobby just very, very slightly uses the potential of the premise a bit more so than Joe does. And I'm leaning towards Bobby on that. I get a good picture of the creatures and being able to lean into that potential of the creatures on this island. And I think Joe sounds really good, but I'm giving a narrow victory to Bobby.
All right, cool.
Yeah, when we were choosing these movies and Tristan chose this, I had no idea what this movie was, and then it was based on real books.
I figured out what
some people are passionate.
I figured out what this book was about by reading an Amazon review for the book, where this person that read it like broke it down like chapter by chapter, because I couldn't find anything else about this book anywhere, and I was like, oh, this book's basically a character study of their uncle through the kid's eyes, and I'm like, I'll just do it through Paul Thomas Anderson's eyes.
Yeah, I recently looked at the book on Wikipedia, and there's literally nothing.
It's a period.
Has a blank space.
It's a dot. I just looked at it.
Well,
yeah.
Glad you guys put the research in, except for Bobby, kind of. But honestly, it would be a travesty if we did this episode and it didn't come down to the Frosted Flakes story being the deciding pitch.
Congratulations,
Game
Joe.
7.
Let's wait on that.
I did not expect you were going to get to Game 7 on this one. I thought for sure there were points where Bobby was running away with it there.
It was been both ways. I was down too.
Well, Joe was up, and then Bobby started fighting.
I don't think I've ever been
Joe,
down. I think I've only been winning or tied.
Same. I think that's right.
Yeah. So I'm.
This is also my
maybe
shortest.
Bobby's first lead of the night could be this. I'm excited because I know what rules you guys have left. It will make for a pretty different one. So.
Yeah, I know what
they're great.
Is, so.
They're great. The Frosted Flakes story came out in 2002. The director was George Hickenlooper. Got a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. They're Great is based on the real-life story of John and Will Kellogg and their journey to create the market Frosted Flakes and other cornflake cereal. The film is centered around the warring brothers' battle against partner-turned-rival CW Post and baseless attacks from an increasingly health-conscious fake news media, starring Jon Voight, and financed by the Kellogg Company. Their great has been heavily criticized as corporate propaganda for significantly altering history as well as portraying the Kellogg's as faultless heroes. So glad this was ahead of its time in 2002 with fake news and painting these pictures. So Joe lost that one, so he gets to decide just who goes first.
I'll just start. Just to
We
rip the Band-Aid off.
Our based on your rule, we actually might have relatively similar pitches as far as like tone. So let's see.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. My director is David Wayne, who has directed various movies like A Futile and Stupid Gesture, and he was also behind a lot of the Wet Hot American Summer movie and shows. And the rule I use is one must have a cast of a sitcom. I've spent most of my research finding a sitcom that had a cast that fit this, and I picked the sitcom that it was like kind of chalk and kind of obvious, but ultimately the only one I could find where I could find guys that I felt like could play brothers and just was the right age range and whatever. And the sitcom I chose was The Office. So for Will Kellogg, I have Ed Helms, and for John Harvey Kellogg, I have Steve Carell, and then in the role of C.W. Post, I have James Spader. Because I didn't want it to just feel like an Office thing. James Spader was in a number of episodes, but he wasn't like one of the leads. It's not like a John Krasinski or something. And so my movie is going to be a straight-up comedy, where the 1980 movie Airplane was essentially a line-for-line remake of the dramatic movie 0 Hour, but done comedically. I want to do the same for Their Great, A Frosted Flake Story. The Kellogg's were absurd, crazy people who made cereal. There is no way to make an entertaining movie about them that isn't a comedy, and I want Steve Carell to play John Harvey Kellogg as a bumbling lunatic. So when it goes towards the ends of the movie and he is talking about eugenics and sterilization, the audience believes he should be sterilized, and the moment is seen as absurd and crazy and not completely terrifying. Also, the scenes of him making cereal so people are less horny will be played comedically rather than seriously, because that's the only way to make that work. No one can believably watch a guy make cereal to make people less horny and be like, oh, this is great dramatic stuff going on here. James Spader will play C.W. Post as an over-the-top conniving evil villain in a movie about cornflakes. And then Will Kellogg, played by Ed Helms, can be more of the straight man who is the plucky underdog in a world full of crazies. And that's my pitch. It's, for the most part, a line-by-line reading of the original, played, comedically, with a few more different added jokes. And that's my pitch. Because this plot and movie is absurd.
All right. Okay. That had some things in it. Bobby, what do you got for us?
All right, so we had similar thoughts in that the story is ridiculous, especially because reading the original premise, it played with history a ton, especially calling it Their Great, the Frosted Flake Story, and focusing it on Will Kellogg and John Kellogg, who died before Frosted Flakes technically existed. Cornflakes, they made a lot of healthy cereals. That was like what Kellogg did to start. They started out and there's like part of a healthy, balanced breakfast. So to make this Their Great, the Frosted Flake Story about Will Kellogg and John Kellogg, I'm basically saying with my premise, and I'm making mine a mini series, what if they started making all the sugary cereals first, back in like 1906, and put out all these crazy like Frosted Flake stuff instead of the healthy things? How would that go, and amp it up to craziness? So it's going to be show run by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. It's going to be it's going to star Dave Franco as Will Kellogg, Seth Rogen as John Kellogg. You're going to get a lot of like the similar kind of actors that show up in their movies as like other small characters, but then also C.W. Hill is going to be played by Jonah Hill. So it's definitely, it's a clear, or Post. Did I say the wrong? Yeah. C. Post is going to be played by Jonah Hill. Yeah, I said the actor's last name.
Played by Jonah Post.
Yep, pretty much. But again, it's a comedy that plays with history in a similar premise to the original. Will and John Kellogg journey to make and sell Frosted Flakes. But in the early 1900s, when Kellogg founded it in real life, like I said, they did not exist till 1952, year after John died. The premise is, what if the first? So I kind of went through this already, but this shows. So it shows them in the beginning, kind of trying out these wild cereal ideas. Like their ideas is like, we want to make things that like kids will definitely like. Everyone's going to love this because it just tastes so sugary and great. But they're going to have a lot of wild kind of ideas with it before they land on their normal stuff. But it's going to then involve children getting addicted to it and acting as if it's like a drug, getting backlash from parents who complain that their children are going through withdrawals when they don't have the cereal. The structure of it is the first episode is introducing them and their wild ideas. Episode 2 would be them deciding on Frosted Flakes eventually. Like it shows all their crazy experiments and stuff, and then it lands on Frosted Flakes as the first one they're going to push. Episode 3 is the world is introducing it to the world and it becoming like massively popular overnight, and they become like superstars with this cereal. Episode 4 is then the realization that the kids are getting addicted to it and the backlash from the parents, and like some fun scene, like, you know, weird scenes with kids kind of begging for the cereal and all that. John and Will in episode 5 get into like a major fight before accidentally sending all of their ideas into a production line, which pop out all the Kellogg brand cereals that we now know. And after this kind of magical moment where you have like this awe-inspiring, like there's Frosted Flakes, there's whatever the rest of theirs are, Tricks, and here's this and all other Kellogg cereals. A mob outside of all the angry parents set the building on fire, and the last shot of the show is all of the sugary creations burning up in this building, and it's just kind of it's just a weird, bizarre, because there's no way to tell this real story and make it interesting. So they're essentially big time drug dealers to children is kind of the joke that they're getting at in the show, where it's sugar. And they started just making all these cereals. And so instead of a healthy, balanced breakfast that Kellogg became known for, it's like, we're going to do it as if, like, show why it's not a good thing that we give these things to kids now, but play with it in a funny way.
All right. Well, Tristan is the generous host that chose this one for you guys to work with. Do you have any questions for him?
I have a couple of questions here. I have a question for Joe, because I know he's doing sort of like a direct parody of the original. So I have some quotes here from John Voight talking about the original movie. He said, "Filming They're Great was like a spiritual experience. I saw God in Tony the Tiger." So are you going to have some jokes kind of referencing the religious story going on here? And John Voight kind of found God on the set of this movie, and if even had a priest come on set weekly and say a prayer with him every Sunday. So are you going to kind of, in your meta kind of parody of the movie, are you going to reference that at all?
Yeah, so one of the thing is the Kellogg's in real life were hardcore Seventh-day Adventists, and so one of the like jokes in my movie that I'm kind of adding, because like I said, Airplane was for the most part a line-by-line remake of 0 Hour, but there were some added jokes. There is going to be a joke where the Jesus statue breaks in their church, and they don't really have anything else to replace it with except the tiger statue outside, and so they put the tiger statue in place of the Jesus statue and just pray to that for a while in the movie. And so that's kind of the joke that's where that parody joke comes in, and that's where they get the inspiration for Tony the Tiger in my movie.
Interesting, because I have a similar question for Bobby. In the creation of the Tony the Tiger scene in the original is kind of one of the more silly scenes. They're getting in this argument in the boardroom when they almost get in a fist fight over what color Tony's mascot's going to be. One guy wants to be red, one guy wants to be blue. So they get in this almost fisticuffs argument, and they get it broken up, and the guy says, "Oh, they're fine, they're both fine, they're great, they're great." And the guy goes, "Oh my God, they're great." And that's how I kind of come up with the line for "they're great." So I want to
Tristan's a big fan of this
your
movie.
story from this movie. How did they come up with the "they're great" slogan in your story, Bobby?
I mean, honestly, it's just like I said, with them coming up with these crazy things, like they think every single one of their creations is great. So that's their great part isn't the big thing, but they're trying to come up with what mascot can really push this. And like they do kind of get into a bit of a fight, and Seth Rogen lands on top of Dave Franco, and his red beard, like kind of red orange beard, is on top of him, and he's like, "I got it." And because it looks like a tiger, it like the camera pans and it looks like his beard is a tiger. So it's like, it's a weird, funny scene that can happen in these type of stuff with Seth Rogen and that. So there you go.
Yeah, those are my questions. I got some good insight on the pitches there from that. If
Glad
you
we
guys
could
have anything else,
help.
I'm ready to hear you argue about it.
Yeah, I think Tristan covered every question that we might have. So we'll give you guys your time to fight it out.
All right, so I think I go first. So my thing with like mine being more of a direct parody, I feel like with yours, especially with like the change in history, I feel like it might not work to the same level of like people understanding the joke of switching it so they start with or like unhealthy cereals knowing they originally tried to start with healthy cereals. I don't know if that necessarily works with the real story not being that well known. And then my thing is too, I just don't know if like switching that and making that like the alternate history of your movie is like a big enough crux or a big enough draw to make it like that much more interesting other than just being like weird and not really making any sense. And that's kind of my big main problem with your movie of it's just like I don't know if just like them like I get your allegory for like being drugs, but it's not like they were connected to drugs or I just don't really understand how your movie is matters, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I just don't understand how the changing of your alternate history makes like that much interesting of a movie when the original story itself not like that interesting.
Right. Back to you, Bobby. You got 1 minute.
So the zaniness of it really sells it, but you always get like Seth Rogen and Goldberg. Like they can put some themes into stuff and have it come out really well, especially lately. And what I'm getting at is you know that everyone now eats super unhealthy, so that will be part of the marketing. Is like, what if we did essentially back to start essentially in the early 1900s, like do it then like they do like we do it now. But then the rest of it is just zany craziness, and you get a lot of more of the fun comedic moments with definitely some allegories to like the drugs and to sugar and to like the unhealthiness. But it's a lot more of just it sounds way more entertaining than a version of a straight up retelling of a movie that not a lot of people know, and one that does like I don't get the appeal and what humor is actually going to come across and actually appeal to everyone, where mine at least has a lot of broad comedy in it with Seth Rogen and with Dave Franco as well as Jonah Hill, and I think they play in a lot more than your movie, especially with your director choice. Again, I think yours just plays as a weird retelling, straight up retelling of a movie no one saw that is going to have like maybe a couple like cracks of smiles, but I don't see it working as a full on like laugh out loud comedy. Whereas the potential with the people that I cast and put in charge of it, I think I do see that.
All right, Joe, you've got 2 minutes to respond to that. I definitely want to hear your response to how does this appeal to people who aren't familiar with the deep cut original? Like yours seems like a direct parody, so how do you justify that with the movie that in the title is forgotten?
So like I mean I know I've been comparing like doing the 0 Hour Airplane reference a lot, but 0 Hour was not like a big famous movie. I feel like I more want the tone of like David Wayne's works, like Wet Hot American Summer, which has a following, and then like A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which was a movie I really liked a few years ago, and that's kind of the tone I want. And I feel like you have Steve Carell, Ed Helms, and what's his face, doing like these big zany over the top characters. These two brothers, like I said in the my last pitch for Bone Wars, you have these two brothers, or not two brothers, two friends, like going to battle over each other with dinosaurs in the background. This one is still like these two brothers being zany over the top in a world about cereal, and people know Frosted Flakes or like that cereal. They like know that, so there's at least that connection to it. And I don't think it necessarily matters if the original movie and what they're parroting is super popular, because they can still have biopic parody elements throughout their movie as well that everyone knows.
Can I get clarification? Who is your director?
David Wayne.
Oh, David. Okay. All right.
What did you think?
All right,
You said
if you got any
Damon,
final
Damon
thoughts, Joe, that
Wayans?
was your 2
Yes.
Oh, you thought Damon Wayans was the director of my movie this whole time?
But I still have the same argument against it. I don't think that really works, but it's again like, yeah. All right. Are we?
Yeah, that's Joe's
clarification.
2 minutes there. If
Okay.
you got any final questions or thoughts, Johnny?
I get my.
Yeah, we got
Bobby
to
gets
over
2
to
minutes.
Bobby's, but
Yeah.
Bobby's got his last 2 minutes.
Yep. All right. Again, I don't think a straight up retelling is going to have enough comedy. Like Airplane was a once in a lifetime kind of thing where that really worked, and it was a lot of like they cast the right people in it. It reinvigorated it. It started an entire career. It was it was kind of I don't see that working nowadays, where you straight up remake a movie with the same dialogue, add maybe a couple jokes, and have it play as an actually full on straight up comedy, and people will enjoy it, because it wasn't written as a comedy in the first place. So you have to find that very rare script that works when you play it. You also have to play, a lot of them play it straight. Yours has a lot of zaniness and craziness. Like, playing it straight can bring out the comedy in a weird situation that shouldn't, like, maybe shouldn't work, or shouldn't, like, show why the original was so bad or something. There has to be a reason that you're doing a straight up retelling of the movie. That's all I'm getting at. I don't see that with this. For mine, at least, it is a comedy, and it does take the basis of it and put it in a fun way, and it is more of it has the more potential to be funny and to be creative in the joke telling, and creative with what Seth Rogen can do, where yours is like, let's follow the same script. We might add a couple of little jokes here and there, but you're telling the same story exactly the same way. Mine at least changes it, and it's a clear change of history. They're gonna market it that way, so that you at least know that is what is going on in this show. It's a short series, five episodes, 30 to 40-minute episodes. It's,
20 seconds.
it's not an hour-long drama about these characters. You're going to get to the point. It's going to be funny. You're going to get some fun scenes for 5 episodes, and it's going to be a fun little binge watch, I think. And yours just sounds like nothing to me. I don't get any feeling from it.
All right. It's harsh words from there, Bobby, on the end. You got any thoughts, Johnny? Or questions?
I disagree with Bobby on one thing, and that's I don't feel anything towards Joe movie. I actively hate Joe's movie. He lost me at Ed Helms. He's the most unwatchable person in Hollywood, and I do not understand how he's famous. Ed Helms is awful. And Steve Carell being over the top zany is also terrible. Steve Carell has shown that he is much stronger as a dramatic actor or playing the straight man with outrageous things happening around him. I think his worst roles are when he's trying to be super comedic and stuff. Look at Dinner for Schmucks. I don't like him in Anchorman. I don't like his roles when he is those kind of characters. So Joe lost me at Ed Helms and continued to lose me with the rest of his pitch. So I'm going to go with Bobby. That sounds like something I'd actually check out. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg have shown that they can be really solid showrunners and produce some really good stuff. Just look at, they had a big hand in Invincible, and that's one of the best shows that have come out in a while. So I'm going to go with Bobby on that one, just based on strength of cast and directing and everything like that. I think Bobby actually made it something watchable, and Joe would be a movie that, like the remake of Vacation, that no one cares about, and it is just bad.
I'm leaning towards the same opinion as Johnny. I think especially Joe's cast is what hurt him. I love the David Wayne choice. I think What Hot American Summer is hilarious, and I think both of those TV show spin-off things have been really good too. But I just don't necessarily think the cast that you picked are the ones that I think would work great in the premise. I don't think either one of them perform well when they're doing like their high energy, loud kind of stuff. I think both of them get like annoying and shrill really quickly when they do that kind of performance. So I unfortunately think the cast kind of hurt it for me, because when I think of the movie, I just think of the cast trying to perform that way, and it would just grind at me. So I'm going towards Bobby here. I think the miniseries is an interesting choice. I think you guys both went for comedy, but I think the miniseries tends to lean towards like all these crime thrillers or these slow burning mysteries, and I think the idea of like the binge through it 1-season comedy is a really cool idea for a miniseries. And I think the twist of, well, what if they had these gross, fat, sugary stereos back in the day, and it could be some commentary on consumerism, commentary on all that kind of stuff. And I think that Bobby's has a lot of more potential to be funny than Joe's does, so I'm leaning towards Bobby. And I think that gives Bobby the win. We're on the last
It does.
squeezing towards for the win after Joe was on a run for so long.
Down 0-2.
That
Yeah,
last
was
one,
a close one.
they're great. It's like the one I had like no approach for at all. That one, I think I wrote that pitch like I wrote that pitch Monday night, because I'm like, I have to write something, because I have no angle, no option. I had no idea of what to even do for that movie.
It took me a while. I think I finished that one at about 4:00 today. So.
Well, I liked you guys' answers to the questions. I'm glad that you guys both had answers for those. And surprisingly are able to get some fun. I'm glad neither of you went for like, oh, we're doing an actual like biopic about these people.
Oh no, because I read
lost.
I read their Wikipedia page and I'm like, these people are fucking crazy. This is definitely going to be a comedy.
Yeah, I feel like that you could have gone a couple directions. You could have went. I think you could have went. I mean, I like the way Bobby went because I wouldn't have seen that coming really, and I like that as like kind of a nice surprise. Joe, I think, it had the right idea, but just had like casting that really hurt.
I spent so long trying to find a sitcom that basically had like 3 people I thought could like believably play these roles, and I got to the point where I'm like, fuck it, I'll just pick these 3 because I'm not finding anything.
Right.
I tried to do the cast of Wet Hot American Summer, but y'all wouldn't let me. You said it didn't count as a sitcom.
I think you could have done a really dark version of this movie and made it about very unlikable characters. And honestly, you could have done something like this as a PTA movie with just like, you know, you don't need likable characters or people that you're rooting for to make an interesting watch. And Paul Thomas Anderson's done that with The Master and you know, There Will Be Blood and things like that. So I think you could have had the center of this be a really dark, evil character and done something like that. But you both went for the comedic angle.
If I were Joe, I wouldn't have worried too much about the cast matching the original people because I feel like so much of the appeal of Wet Hot American Summer is like these casts do not match these characters at all. And
yeah,
like,
they're old.
You could have thrown anybody and just made that part of the joke, you know. But it was a squeeze. It was a close one for the last battle. I was surprised that you guys both ended up getting some good stuff out of there. Great.
Yeah, you guys had some good arguments. So real quick before we end it, we'll just go around the table and say what was your favorite pitch from Bobby? What was your favorite pitch of Joe's? Joe, what was your favorite pitch, Bobby? Or hardest one to fight against?
Yeah, so as much as I shit on it as I was talking, well, I actually barely got to say anything of mine, but I said it was boring. His Bone War sounded awesome. So I really, really loved that. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to fight this with my ridiculous pitch. So that was, I mean, we didn't even get to fight it, but I just loved the sound of that one. And I would watch that miniseries any day.
All right.
Yeah, for me, I talk shit that it wasn't a whole lot, and I still don't know how much it like fits the book, but I would say I would definitely watch his version of Cryptid Hunters, of like the Jim Henson kind of labyrinth type feel. I feel like that'd be pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
If not that, I as much as I didn't really understand his Metroid pitch, if I were to watch an anime movie, that definitely seems like one I would check out. I just didn't understand it, and that was my big defense or attack against it. So I feel like if you don't know shit about Metroid, I don't think you get his movie. So.
Yeah, I think it's more of a straightforward plot if you've ever actually played the game and like not even just knowing the story, but like I got what Bobby's plot is because I played it, but the actual story of the game is not very complicated. Bobby just went maybe a little too detailed in the description of it, but not quite as much as I did with. What was it in the championship match?
Cool.
The Constant Gardener.
Constant Gardener.
Yeah, so Bobby almost fell a little bit into that trap of just like you know more about it, so you want to put more detail in, but didn't quite go too far enough where even he lost interest by the end of the pitch. But my favorite pitch of the day was Joe's Bone Wars. I really liked that. I was hoping for like a serious take on it, and I thought that was perfect for like a mini series. But my most surprising pitch, like I said Joe's didn't win me over, but like Bobby actually I think had as good of a pitch as you could have done with something I wouldn't have expected from a mini series of They're Great. When I saw that was the last rule he had, and I was like, how the hell is he going to make this work? And I liked the idea of them being like basically selling sugar like drugs to kids and stuff. I think that could be an interesting plot around something. So I like that pitch too from Bobby. Tristan, what about you?
I was a big fan of Bobby's Cryptid Hunters pitch. I think they both had good Cryptid Hunters pitches, but I think Bobby really was able to get into the potential and have all these cool creatures. And even without a ton of idea of the plot, I just feel like with the Jim Henson connection and some of the visual ideas, I just got like a chill out and vibe, kind of like a movie I throw it on Disney Plus and watch in the afternoon sometime. And I think Joe had an interesting uphill battle with his rule choice on that one, and I think he did a really good job fighting for it. So I think I was very much impressed by that pitch, even though he didn't win
I'm
on that
proud
one.
that I went from I knew as soon as I said Paul Thomas Anderson that you guys were going to be out, and I'm like, if I can battle my way back and make you guys understand how this is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, I'll be in good shape. And I feel like even though I lost that pitch, I feel like I still succeeded in that aspect, and so I'm proud of that one.
For sure. I agree with that because I thought it was right away I had that one, and then I'm like, you're actually making really good points about this one, so I have to fight for mine.
I want to send a shout out to the person that wrote the Amazon review. Otherwise, I would have had no idea what the fuck that book was about. So.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think we're done here today. It was a fun match. We got hopefully next week, but I know everyone's schedule's been crazy. My schedule's been really crazy. Not exactly the easiest time to work in restaurants right now.
No.
Hopefully people come back to work soon, and we'll see if that happens. But it's hard to find people, so I'm doing about 60 to 70 hours a week of basically hard labor. So that's exciting. But when we have time to find episodes, hopefully next week we plan on Tristan versus Joe. If we have to throw something together last minute or do something else, you might get a different episode. But we'll always try to put something out every week if we can. If not all of us are involved, check out Tristan and Joe's Disney Plus reviews. If ever Bobby and I can appear on those, we will. I like all the stuff. We're just kind of producing as much content. Check us out on TikTok and Instagram and all the social media platforms at Movie Changeup. I just released on Letterboxd. If you find me on there, I ranked all the James Bond movies, and I'm going to be putting out more fun rankings and stuff like that soon. Anyone have anything else to kind of plug or mention before we go?
Yeah, I just want to say two things real quick. Paul commented that they're a fan of our kind of new updated format. Didn't really make the episode shorter because we're still at 2 hours and 26 minutes. But if this episode wasn't so close, I think we went into the final pitch at just under 2 hours. It was an hour 59, so I think we're on the right track. And also, I want to add that this episode and all of our main episodes will premiere on YouTube at 7 o'clock on Fridays and will debut on podcast form 7 o'clock on Fridays. And then I usually try to have our Disney Plus reviews premiere live on YouTube at noon on Saturdays or 7 on Saturdays if we have to tape later than noon. So I will add that.
So just to be clear, 7 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern. This show will premiere on YouTube.
Cool. Because I wasn't sure, so yeah.
And all of our other main shows. So anytime we do, a Hall of Fame or a Mount Rushmore or another regular Movie Changeup show, will always premiere Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Just for more consistency. So that's all I have.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for showing up. Johnny Sucks is still a bad take, and I'm the champion. Screw all of you. Goodbye.